My name is Gonzalo Garcia, and today, I almost died. I woke up to something pretty strange. Green liquid sliding down my throat. It was a healing potion worth 100 gold coins. My yellow coat was shredded and covered in blood, but the wound had already closed up. Standing up inside that cold stone hall, suddenly, memories of two different lives flooded my mind. Right then, I understood everything. A bratty young noble named Elijah S.L. He stabbed me with a dagger. I had teased him too sharply about his family, and he lost control right in front of everyone. Wild, right? His father, Baron Otto, slapped him hard, sending that dagger clattering to the floor. My own father, Baron Raymond, stood up ready to fight. Luckily, Father Rory, the priest, stepped right between us. He suggested we should move to the council hall to settle this. Honestly, I was pretty glad, because starting an all-out war was the last thing I wanted. Still, the two barons almost started fighting again. Baron Otto desperately wanted to protect his son, while my father wanted Elijah hanged for attacking another noble. In public, suddenly, Father Rory warned them both that the Dark Blood Brotherhood cult was causing trouble, and the Count and the church did not want noble infighting right now. He even threatened to pull every single priest completely away from our lands for 10 whole years. That changed everything. Watch as I hid my hand behind my back and flashed my father a 5-finger sign. He caught the secret signal and understood. He demanded 1,000 gold coins plus 100 for my potion. Baron Otto roared, claiming he would rather go to war instead. But I watched his face very carefully. The moment his brow twitched, I knew he was ready to give in. So, we bargained back and forth, until I finally agreed to 600 gold coins total, and also promised to stop chasing that girl named Lolita. Hearing that, Elijah's eyes immediately lit up. He thinks he'll marry her next year. Honestly, he didn't really mind being the youngest son. It meant he had absolutely zero right to inherit anything. Besides, Lolita's father would never choose him as his heir. 600 gold coins were worth way more than his pride. Once everyone left, his father gently patted his shoulder. He said he did well during the bargaining, but his little tricks won't work forever. On old barons, he told him he'd give those 500 coins, since he paid for that costly potion himself, directly to his eldest sister, Maeve. She used that gold in the capital to build major connections for him. Then he quietly stared out the stone window and told him something quite important. Next spring, he will become a frontier knight. He must prepare and remember their family motto: grow and spread with deep roots, firm in our honesty today. But get this, he's learning more about his powers. He was just lying on his pine bed, wrapped up in a warm wool blanket, examining the dagger that almost took his life. He even wore black mink gloves while handling it, just to be safe. And when he focused on the weapon, words floated into his vision like a game screen. It was identified as a concealed dagger, giving the wielder a nice little bonus to strategy. Crafted by the mysterious and secret Blood Brotherhood cult, the weapon easily hides its own magical nature, while stirring up pure anger and total confusion in anyone who touches it. That perfectly explains why young Elijah lost control so easily. To anyone else, it just looked like an ordinary dagger, with a pretty cheap red gem on its hilt. His young servant, little Martin, knelt right beside him, the old butler's son. Just 16, his family has served them for generations. When he looked at the boy, his detailed information flashed in his mind. His skills were quite low, but his loyalty was 100%, which was perfect, since he'd sent him to grab the weapon right from the banquet hall. Elijah was way too busy thinking about his fiancée to even care what happened to it. Personally, I have no plans to chase after the Blood Brotherhood. That sort of game is for counts and bishops. Definitely not for a baron's second son like me. My only job is to stay sharp. This strange system lets me see everyone's loyalty. That means absolutely no spy can ever fool me. Today, I rode out with my father and his troops, heading straight to Fruitwood Town. Today was the big day to select new squires for our tough frontier knights. The entire town square was packed with desperate villagers, serfs, laborers, and even lowly slaves. Every single struggling family brought out their boys, praying one of them gets chosen. Becoming a squire. It is pretty much the only way for commoners to climb the ranks. My father sat on a red bench, while Martin poured him some fruit wine. Then he announced the big selection, proclaiming me as the future lord of these frontier lands. Let's see what happens when I use my cheat eye. Bright blue numbers instantly popped up over every candidate. Most of them had a bravery stat of just 1, with zeros across the board. Honestly, it was disappointing. They had 0 books, no real combat training, and barely enough food to survive. I realized I would have to prioritize their loyalty, way more than talent. I stepped forward and loudly announced my brutal test. Anyone who wants this spot must run completely barefoot, all the way from here to my father's castle. And yes, even the slaves can join. I needed to see who actually had real grit. Plus, I wanted to test exactly how my loyalty system handles high-pressure situations. 2 candidates caught my eye, starting with Charles, the local butcher's second son. He had slightly higher bravery because he ate well. Next was Yorick, the carpenter's son. He spent his whole life traveling village to village, helping his family, which gave him pretty good stamina. He even picked up some basic knowledge. Both of them started with 30 loyalty. Watch this, here's where it gets interesting. Charles immediately starts to struggle. Since he was quite overweight and not used to running with all his heart, he constantly complained about his father, and even about me, his noble lord. His loyalty instantly dropped 1 point. But Yorick noticed I was watching him, feeling proud and hopeful. He ran even harder, keeping his loyalty rock solid. This taught me something pretty major. And get this, people aren't just game stats. Everyone reacts differently to the exact same challenge. Some lose loyalty, while others keep it. And some might even gain more. The slaves started incredibly fast, since their bare feet were already pretty tough. But intense hunger soon caught up. Their empty stomachs slowed them way down, allowing the villagers to breeze right past. Once 30 young men crossed the finish line. At our castle, I declared the race over. The boys who were only steps away looked utterly heartbroken. Those further back looked absolutely terrified, likely thinking of the brutal beatings their fathers would give them back at home. I now have 30 strong candidates to train, and a brand new grasp of my power. After 30 young men passed the running test, I made sure they all understood that they weren't actually squires just yet. Get ready, because 3 months of brutal training lay ahead. Only those who could bear the pain and stay incredibly loyal would earn the right to serve me. I don't want any weak followers who complain at the very first hardship. I want men as loyal and steady as oxen, ready to fight for me against any enemy out there. This matters because the frontier lands are pretty dangerous. They lie far beyond the kingdom borders, packed with monsters, bandits, and rebels, savage tribes, and rival nobles. If my attendants lost faith too easily, they might easily betray me on my second night there, slipping away to become bandits in the mountains. The prime land, yeah, those got snatched up by high nobles ages ago, meaning a newcomer like me gets absolutely nothing. So, training kicked off outside my father's castle. Out in the freezing winter wind, I ran modern drills, tactics I vividly remembered from my past life. The focus, absolute, and questioning obedience. I yelled and pushed them past their limits, constantly reminding them that hesitation on the battlefield will cost limbs and heads. Luckily, I actually know how to train. Growing up as a knight squire myself helped, caring for my father's armor and horses, before finally learning how to fight. By winter's end, only 15 recruits stood. The rest either quit or just lacked real loyalty. And this is where things get truly interesting. Every remaining recruit got called straight to my quarters for a private chat. Back in my past life, I was a leader, so I knew exactly how much a personal conversation instantly solidifies loyalty. A real leader always shares both food and struggles, but he also maintains a very respectful boundary. I had young Martin serve steaming meat soup to everyone, but I never served it myself. They had to feel respected, never equal. First up, Yura. The poor kid was shaking so hard he could not even look up. Regular peasants are heavily trained from birth to never make eye contact with nobles. I gently rested my hand on his shoulder, telling him to raise his head and speak the truth. His eyes instantly welled up, but once he sipped the warm soup, he slowly relaxed. Yura opened up about his carpenter parents, his 2 older brothers, and his beloved little sister. Mainly, he worried about her dowry, since trade skills only pass down to sons. Wait till you hear his real dream. He spent his whole childhood traveling around with family, moving village to village, quietly listening to elders spin wild tales about knights. Under the giant trees, he had always dreamed of eventually becoming a real knight. But being the second-born son, the boy knew he had to get to work early. Otherwise he would just be a useless burden. I smiled and told him a simple truth. We are the same. I am a second son as well. Something shifted deep inside him, and his lingering fear finally melted into a genuine smile. He answered me, his voice filled with raw emotion. Yes, young master. In that very moment, we became far more than just master and servant. Two young guys who finally understood each other. After our brief talk, Ox's loyalty suddenly jumped to 90, just 10 points away from full. All that intense training had also boosted his bravery. Plus, eating better with 3 solid months of meat and hot soup finally allowed his body to reach peak strength. Then Lyle walked in, but I already knew his story. So, I avoided asking him anything about his family. Instead, I went straight to asking about his current troubles. Lyle was a remarkably strong young man, far tougher than most. He even possesses a special trait that boosts his bravery and helps him grow incredibly fast. Based on his training stats, he should make an absolutely outstanding squire. But there's a massive catch with him. After 3 solid months of training, good meals, and my direct attention, his loyalty stat has not budged at all. It remains stuck at 30, exactly where it started on day 1. Literally every other recruit became far more loyal over our months spent together, but not Lyle. I have no idea what his deal is, but I'll be keeping a very close eye on him. Now, this is where the mystery finally gets solved. When he first arrived in Fruitwood Town with his parents, his loyalty score was already at 60. But the second my father announced the squire selection, it instantly crashed down to 30. You see, Lyle's parents are waste cleaners at the castle. They empty out all the restrooms, including mine, which sounds like a pretty lowly job, but it is actually one of the most highly trusted positions. Around nobles, you just cannot let just ordinary people handle your most private affairs. His family has done this work for generations, and their loyalty stays at a perfect 100. The only problem, Lyle himself. He is strong and incredibly talented, and some knights actually wanted him as their squire before. But once they learned his parents' job, they immediately walked away. No knight wants hands smelling of waste, polishing his armor among commoners. Waste cleaners are easily the most mocked group of all. Even hungry peasants curse them, just to feel better about their own sad lives. But get this, Lyle had someone he loved, a girl named Amy, the daughter of a free tenant farmer, at the orchard near town. The two of them had planned to run away together. In the wilderness, they might have frozen to death, but at least they would have loved each other freely. Then my squire selection completely destroyed that dream. I forced him into 3 months of intense military training, instead of letting them elope. After this heartfelt talk, his loyalty finally rose to 50. That is the absolute highest it will naturally go from here. Now, it depends entirely on my next move. Then there is Ollie, a 14-year-old slave boy. His parents were taken as war prizes by my father years ago, and they still cannot speak our language very well. Most slave children are just too hungry and too weak to develop properly. So for Ali to make the top 30 was almost a miracle. Watch this. During the race, he was clever. He did not rush forward, bringing his only water flask and begging some food from kind villagers before the run even began. Then, he ran close behind others to block the wind. And when everyone else grew tired and terribly thirsty, he finally drank his water and ate his food. He finished in 30th place, through pure wit. His special trait even boosts his tactical strategy skill. But his weak body nearly failed during winter training, and without my quiet support, he would have been cut. But now, his loyalty is at a full 100. Out of my final 15 boys, every single one has loyalty above 80, except Lyle. Only 2 possess special traits, namely Lyle and Ali. Late that night, my father, Baron Raymond, and my elder brother Guy II, came to sit with me. Guy was named after our late grandfather. He has always been the primary heir to our Brighton lands. Both of them had been observing my training methods. All winter, my father could tell the training ideas I used were highly valuable. And inside our kingdom, military knowledge is a closely guarded family treasure, passed down only through written records. My father then brought up the nearby Snowpine lands, owned by Baron Otto, the guy whose son stabbed me. Father has already sent scouts to keep watch on them. He reminded me that the Ocel family line of knowledge was completely broken in the last generation, and Otto only regained his title through military achievements. A weaker neighbor only makes our land stronger. I have also been hunting secret cult members in Brighton on my own. Then, my father spoke seriously. He told me that our family motto, to grow and take root in honesty, is somehow our greatest strength and our weakness. For 1,000 years, our family encouraged having many children, which means our lands get divided again and again. Every branch grows poorer, but the Garcia name has spread across the entire kingdom. We might hold small titles, but there are just so many of us. My eldest sister, Maeve, had already sent me the official charter for my new frontier lands. Winter travel is pretty brutal, so I will wait until spring before setting off. My father gave me very strict orders, for once I arrive on my new land, I cannot take any settlers or supplies from Brighton, past the meager portion already assigned to me. Every single thing belongs to my brother. Regarding the future, I answered honestly, I understand, father. Everything in Brighton belongs to my brother Guy. Even my current actions chip away at his inheritance. Once my new frontier territory grows, I will pay Guy back every single coin. He smiled, saying he believed my lands would someday be even richer than Brighton. Our Garcia blood ties us together. Then my father firmly held both our hands, and the three of us recited our family motto, together, for the Garcia family glory. May our house stand strong, forever. But before leaving for those wild frontier lands, but first, we have some major work to do. I rode with my men to Yorak's mountain village. Those forests are packed with top-quality timber, which is why his parents settled there as carpenters. I could not recruit any other villagers, because they belong to my brother Guy's future estate. After all, father always said, the best way for brothers to stay close is to keep their financial accounts clear. But look, the village headman bows as we arrive. I completely ignored him, because Guy is his true master. Instead, I headed straight for Yorak's family home. His parents knelt in absolute terror the moment they saw us, thinking their son had done something terrible, and that their entire family would be punished. Their rough, calloused hands trembled against the freezing dirt. I patted Yorak on the shoulder, telling them to stand up, because Yorak did incredibly well, and was now a squire. They embraced each other, weeping with pure joy. Little Martin quietly placed flour and cured meat right beside them before stepping back. It was far more food than they had seen in years, and they could only bow down in deep gratitude. I even arranged for Yorak's little sister to come work as our new laundress. Of all the castle's serfs, palace workers hold the absolute highest status. This really helps Yorak's family, while also granting me a subtle way to keep their loyalty strong, even though I hope I never have to use it. I also asked Yorak to find his second brother John, who had already departed from the barony. Since John is no longer serving here, I am completely free to recruit him. I told Yorak to check if John or any skilled friends wanted to join me out on the frontier. Skilled workers are priceless when building up new lands. Yorak planned to leave for the city that very night. Next came Lyle's own problem. He was still meeting up with his beloved Amy, completely in secret at the orchard. Her family are free tenant farmers, not serfs, so I cannot just order the marriage. Worse, Amy's parents utterly looked down on Lyle, all because his mother was once a slave. Even serfs refused to marry their daughters to his kind. While heading over to that orchard, I brainstormed tons of polite ways to handle this, offering nice gifts or fair trades, and talking things through. Then I laughed at myself. Let's be real, my modern thinking was too soft. They were free commoners, but I was still a noble. By the time we arrived, Amy was locked in the cellar. Her father, old Ike, took one look at Lyle beside me and immediately understood. I gave a simple order: hold him down. My powerful squire instantly pinned old Ike to the ground. I slapped the stubborn old man several times, kicked him aside, and demanded he bring Amy out. My cold voice left absolutely no room for argument. He scrambled to tell his other kids to fetch her quickly. There is honestly no reasoning with deep-seated prejudice, so sometimes a ruthless show of force is the only way. A knight's squire marrying a simple fruit picker is nothing shameful. I dragged the entire family right to the small church in Orchard Town. Standing before the priest, Lyle and Amy both said, I act in accordance with the Church of Light. Whenever two free people finally agree to marry, they receive his sacred blessing, which the kingdom's law recognizes. Only slaves are denied this right. Right then, his loyalty stat instantly jumps from 50 to 100. Over these days, I have been working tirelessly to earn the trust of all 15 of my squires, one by one. It honestly reminds me of my past life's grind, when I would go door to door, meeting neighbors with pure youthful energy. If I had been born a baron, with inherited authority and generations of loyal servants, this would be easy, but I am only a second son, so I must do everything myself. Winter finally ended. My father led me into the family library, stopping at a concealed door while I politely turned away, while he unlocked the hidden gears. Only he and my brother Guy know how it works. That is our strict noble rule, and we never break it. We both wore silver-white armor with black cloaks, bearing our purple cedar family crest, complete with spreading branches and green leaves. Look closer. Beyond that doorway stood something amazing. A massive purple tree, towering all the way to the castle's very highest peak. Its trunk was so incredibly wide that 10 men, linking arms, could scarcely wrap around it. Warm sunlight spilled through its green leaves, like golden stars. I removed my silver helmet, letting my long, black hair fall completely free. I reached forward and gently brushed the purple bark, and the tree seemed to whisper ancestral stories, their heartbeats pulsing through all the generations of the Garcia family. This hidden courtyard behind the secret door contained the single most precious treasure of my family, a magnificent wisteria tree, 400 years old, standing inside those high white walls. That massive purple trunk was so wide, 10 grown men could barely wrap around it. Its lower half was scarred with round marks, where ancient branches had been cut long ago, every single mark a trace from my ancestors. Underneath lay those silent blue, green graves of my father's father, my grandfather and old ancestors. Pulling up my system panel revealed its full details. This wood originates from the forest of purple trees, making it absolutely perfect for crafting epic bows, while its fruit makes rare magical material. Pulling my hand away from the bark, I stepped back 3 paces, kneeling down on one knee before my father and the tree. Bright morning sun shone down, feeling exactly like the gaze of the Lord of Light. My father touched my shoulder guard with a silver blade. Then, he spoke words that would alter my path forever. Under this ancient wisteria tree, with our ancestors watching, I, Raymond Garcia, declare that I grant Gonzalo Garcia this sacred family inheritance, which must never go to anyone outside the Garcia bloodline. Pressing my right hand firmly over my heart, I raised my left hand. I swore to accept it, upholding the 6 knighthood virtues, protecting my people as a frontier knight, forever fulfilling my duty, all in the name of the Lord of Light. My father then lifted a decoy tombstone, hiding our secret family treasures. Get ready for this. Inside lay 3 treasures that sustained our entire lineage. A vial of powerful advancement elixir, a tiny, mysterious sapling taking 200 years to mature, and a rare magical purple longbow, made by a legendary enchanter named Trickevi, built to boost arrow accuracy. My father carefully began mixing the potion. Its recipe is only passed down through spoken word, never once written, warning me to watch closely, since this was easily the most vital moment for our entire family lineage. Into the base went 5 drops of rosewood essence, 10 grams of crushed magic crystal, and 1 drop of a magic hawktear, in that exact order. Finally, he sliced his own palm, and let a few drops of his own blood drip inside. Our family blood was the final ingredient. I slammed the entire potion in one go. Pure violent power surged inside me, making my muscles warp and twist, while my chest hammered wildly. That silver plate armor started reshaping over my skin, fusing directly with me like true knight gear. Screaming in agony, I tried clawing the metal off, but my father held me down. That blinding pain felt absolutely endless. But the absolute moment it stopped, the torture vanished instantly. I collapsed onto the cold floor, gasping for air. But look what popped up on my stat panel next. My bravery stat shot up to 9, and even spirit ticked up to 2. Having 2 souls fused together paid off. A cheat skill born of pure luck. I even unlocked 2 unique traits. First was the purple arrow heart, boosting all my courage training, along with my aim and archery. But the next trait was incredibly rare, called purple light. My father froze in absolute disbelief at the name. No family member had held this for 200 years, not since our greatest ancestor, the legendary Violet Dawn Archer, a hero still remembered across all human lands. I gripped my newly formed purple bow, drew back the string, and let fly. And watch how this violet beam tears through the room, punching a clean hole through the solid wall. Sunlight flooded through the smoking gap it left. My father stood there, speechless, but his shock slowly turned into deep sorrow. Just for a second, I wondered if he was finally naming me his heir, and not my older brother, like some grand emperor choosing heirs by merit. But no, the truth was far simpler. He sighed with a heavy heart. Our Forbidden's family grounds. The wall is broken and needs fixing, so I will deduct 10 gold coins from your funds. Turns out, my dad is just incredibly stingy. Life as a poor frontier knight was already hard, and now, things just got a whole lot tougher. He warned me seriously, until you have absolute strength, never show this power unless you absolutely must. But despite himself, he still handed me 3 precious purple wood branches. Even my second brother had never gotten this treatment. Fathers always favor the most gifted child. He explained what these branches really meant. A magic craftsman can rebuild my purple wood bow. If it ever breaks, these 3 branches should last my lineage 200 years, maybe longer. If a gifted heir rises in our family, they can craft another magic bow. Our family has always been famous for archery. Ever since, our ancestors served as the elite longbowmen for the King of August. Then, they found the purple wood trees and built our legacy around them. It takes 200 years for the trunk to become magical material. My own descendants will have to wait 2 centuries before they can harvest their own land. Father also asked me to protect my weaker second brother, Joey. Let's be real, Joey has the least talent of us all. Once my domain grows strong, my elder brother Guy and I must help him. We are bound by blood, even if we keep our accounts separate. Father is 48 now, quite old for a human knight, and Mom passed long ago. Most of his remaining strength goes to us kids. I finally understood something much deeper then. Our family might only hold small titles, but we form a complete, perfect system. Our older branches sell purple wood and fruits to the younger ones, until those younger branches finally reach 200 years, and profit in turn over the centuries. Plenty of greedy fools have tried stealing our trees, but they cannot be transplanted, and the seedlings require 200 years to fully grow. During those 200 years, our family has countless brutal ways to get revenge, through trade, marriages, and lawsuits, deception, theft, or even outright war. No rival family can survive that kind of struggle against us. Then, my father taught me about battle aura, that unique, powerful energy forming inside a knight's body. It strengthens their physique and combat abilities. At higher stages, a knight can coat his body in this aura, eventually projecting it into a physical shape. My father and I spent 3 entire days training inside our family's restricted area, training hard together on our inherited combat techniques. I didn't need any more lessons with the bow, since I had already practiced archery since my childhood. What I needed most now was to fully master this battle aura, making it flow smoothly as the winter snow melted. While I was still preparing to leave my father's castle, a wedding was currently taking place in the northwest of Valiant province. Get this, Baron Otto was marrying off Elijah, the same guy who betrayed me over Lilita, the girl I had surrendered. Only 6 barons were invited. Baron Otto claimed it was due to cult trouble, but the real reason was simply money. The 600 gold coins he paid me had left him unable to host a proper celebration. Even with Lilita's dowry, her father, kind Baron Khan, was quietly embarrassed by such a small affair. In a bedroom of that castle, Elijah was screaming at a masked cultist from the Brotherhood of Blood, demanding respect as the future lord, while threatening the man. But the cultist just rips a red gemstone necklace right off Elijah's chest and bashed his face until it is swollen beyond recognition. Without that necklace, his crimson eyes fade back to their normal brown. Wait until you hear the truth about last summer. Elijah did not become the heir by accident. The cultists had given him poison, and he secretly slipped it into his brother's wine. The Brotherhood actually wanted to corrupt a stronger target, someone like my own brother, Guy. But their spies inside our Brighton lands had all vanished because of the hidden cultist's eye was personally hunting down, so they settled for weak, pathetic Elijah instead. Suddenly, Baron Otto bursts in, clad in silver armor and holding a long sword. He heard everything and with 2 swift strikes, cleanly slices that cultist in half. Then he turns to his son with terrible sorrow. He says he would have challenged my father to a duel to protect Elijah after he stabbed me. He would have secured his son a future, even as a simple frontier knight, but murdering his own brother is completely unforgivable. Elijah lies there, weeping and bloody, begging for mercy. Baron Otto reminds him that their House of Cell has no ancient heritage like my own Garcia family. He earned his title solely through battle. Then the Baron pulls Elijah to his feet, only to declare that his younger brother, and not Elijah, would be the heir. He says the men of House of Cell die standing, ordering Elijah to face his execution. But Elijah can't even manage that. He struggles and cries like a frightened child. Seeing this pathetic cowardice, the last bit of pity in the Baron's heart vanishes. He grabs his son right by the throat, raising his blade to run him through, leaving his body whole as a final mercy. But then, something monstrous happened. A thick crimson mist poured into the room. Baron Otto froze, blood spilling from his mouth. He coughed up fragments of his damaged organs and collapsed. Then a heavy hammer struck his metal helmet. A sinister figure stepped in from behind, wearing a crimson robe and blood god mask, carrying a massive hammer and a strange red lantern that released that crimson mist. Say hello to Priest Everett of this wicked cult, a low-level cult leader, raised to knighthood using a sacred blood chalice. These guys rarely live long because of deadly side effects, but the cult never lacks highly desperate people, willing to pay that terrible price. For months, they hid inside Baron Otto's castle, disguised as simple servants and slaves. They even tricked young Elijah into poisoning his own father's drinking water with a tiny, completely colorless dose. All winter long, whenever that blood lantern burned, the accumulated poison activated all at once. You see, family betrayal always strikes quietly, nearly invisible. The priest snatched up that blood-red necklace and slapped it back onto Elijah's neck. The boy's eyes instantly turned crimson again. His mind went blank. This necklace could control a normal person for a minute, but a fresh knight for only 10 seconds. That was enough. The priest barked a freezing order. Stab him in the heart. Elijah picked up his own father's dropped sword, unbuckled the silver armor, and drove the blade right into Baron Otto's heart. Meanwhile, inside the banquet hall, the 7 barons had received an urgent summons from Count Terence, governor of Valiant Province, demanding they fight against the Brotherhood of Blood. They were already complaining, plotting how to deploy as few soldiers as they possibly could, without getting punished. They were also deeply puzzled. That crazy cult had been causing chaos since last summer, so why did the Count wait until now to call them? In spring, what was his plan? While the anxious barons whispered their worries, a thick crimson mist began to seep silently through the deep cracks in the stone floor and around the doors, moving like a living beast. We only find out about this later on, but on that day, far away, I was still holding my trusty purple bow, still drafting plans for my frontier lands, completely unaware that the brutal Brotherhood of Blood had just decapitated the ruling lords of an entire region in one single night. I only learned these dark details much later, but the terrible slaughter at Baron Otto's castle was way worse than just killing a single man. Father Rory was the first to sense the danger. He yelled to the 7 barons that it was blood poison, but Baron Kent only glared back with mild irritation. The other nobles reached for their summon papers, annoyed at the priest. The church was always like this, acting so high and mighty without offering real help. The banquet was too loud for most to hear clearly, so the barons pretended not to notice and kept talking about sending as few soldiers as possible to the Count. Baron Kent even planned to talk with my own father about the draft later. Then, Baron Enzo, a warrior in his prime, suddenly felt a crushing pressure in his chest. Something was trying to burst right out, but his fighting aura kept forcing it down. He glanced around and saw pink dust spreading through the entire hall. Father Rory was already running for the door, yelling that this was blood poison, but shallow. Since they hadn't visited Otto's castle recently, the barons just needed to suppress it, using their fighting aura to make a quick escape. But Baron Kott had no luck. He'd been visiting Otto quite often to arrange the marriage, and had drunk deeply from his wine for months. Now old and weak, he collapsed onto the table, unable to rise. The remaining 6 barons charged together, but they only wore fine wool wedding clothes, not armor. Their own knights had already been turned against them by cultists among the servants. The barons even suspected that other powerful nobles, maybe the southeastern lords, or even Count Terence himself, were secretly playing deadly games with the Brotherhood of Blood as pawns. But watch Enzo grab a hammer and shield. The 6 formed a tight defensive circle and fought desperately toward the gate, but cultists in plate armor blocked them. Priest Everett cursed his weak followers as useless fools and handed them a thick bowl, blood-red soup. The cultists drank it with wild, fanatical eyes, gaining the raw strength of knights for a short time. But Enzo smashed their heads like a game of whack-a-mole. Without real fighting spirit, they were just reckless fools. Then Everett ordered arrows and stones to rain down, without caring about friend or foe. The poisoned barons, bleeding and exhausted, finally shouted their surrender. They promised to pay ransom, but wait, they weren't completely stupid. That poison and blood soup had been pretty costly, and living barons meant squeezed gold. Later, the 6 barons were dragged to the castle dungeon. Those cultists who drank the soup paid a terrible price. Their bodies rapidly shriveled into skeletons, with only thin skin stretched over them. Everything has a cost, and if 9th-level strength came free, the Brotherhood would have ruled the continent long ago. Outside the castle, firewood was already being stacked. But it was not for the dead, it was for Father Rory. Everett was shaking with pure excitement. He had waited so long for this day. If the Church of Light had not banned nobles from joining the Brotherhood's holy order, he could have lived as a normal priest, blessing weddings and counting tithes, listening to the beautiful choirs. But the church took every bit of happiness from him, and now his twisted version of justice begins. Father Rory was brutally nailed to a cross, with his hands and feet pierced. His bound body bled onto the pyre below. Yet he kept murmuring prayers to the light god. Enraged, Everett whipped the old priest brutally, leaving his chest completely bloody and torn. He ordered his mouth sealed. A cultist stepped forward eagerly, holding a needle and thread, and clumsily sewed the priest's mouth shut. Elijah watched all of this from the outer wall, without feeling a single thing. He had already signed his name on parchment, fully converting to the blood god. No turning back now. If anyone learned of his new faith, they would mark him for death. He was totally trapped. He had even murdered his own father and brother. Betrayal here meant a brutal purification, so his only remaining path was forward. Then, but look here, something happens that echoes across history. A young slave boy is dragged before Elijah. He is small and dark-skinned, looking just like any other slave in Cedar territory. Elijah, puffing himself up with his new title, mimics his dead father's harsh, cold tone. He demands, "Bring me useful news, or I will personally cut out your tongue." The terrified slave kneels, too afraid to look up. He stammers that he spotted a purple cedar banner passing through their territory. It apparently belonged to young Gonzalo Garcia himself. Elijah absolutely loved being called a baron, though he tried looking tough. "You lied, how would a slave know Gonzalo?" Trembling, the slave bowed even lower. "Everyone in Cedar territory knows, Lord. Lord Elijah stole that favorite woman from black-haired Gonzalo. Only the nearby Garcia family has dark hair, and since he is young, it must be him." Feeling smug, Elijah kicked him aside and barked, "Go grab some meat broth as your reward." But here's what Elijah didn't know. This slave was not some random servant. He was my ally. The clever kid who earned my trust last winter had somehow found a way into the enemy camp and was feeding me critical intel. I had not even reached my own lands yet, but my pieces were already moving across the board. The enemy moved much faster than I expected, but I already had my trap waiting, right after Ali delivered his fake report. Elijah nervously paced the outer wall, biting his nails in anxiety. Suddenly, he clapped his head. He decided to send out cavalry scouts. If a real army was coming, he would grab all the gold and run. The scouts quickly returned with some news. I was only leading 300 people on a simple expansion march, 200 slaves and 100 family serfs, purchasing supplies at every tiny town along the way. To Elijah, a group like mine was not an army. Think about it, a walking treasure chest. Plus, he had wanted me dead for ages, so he brought his plan to Priest Everett. The priest was pretty hesitant at first. The Brotherhood's actual mission was causing chaos, not fighting barons, but Everett knew they were broke. Leading over 100 followers meant constant hunger and non-stop questions about where their next meal was coming from. Prayers do not just drop food from heaven. My supplies were simply too tempting. But there was still the massive problem of Knight Hans. He was one of late Baron Otto's truest knights. Now, Hans was bound tightly hand and foot. His armor was stripped away, his mind numb with grief. The lord he had sworn to protect was dead, and the heir had joined a cult. Worse, they were forcing him to attack another noble. A knight's entire honor is loyalty, bravery, and pure devotion. Hans would literally rather bite his tongue off than betray his oath. But get this, it's not that easy. Elijah held his own brother, holding his brother's severed head, blood staining his hands, shouting just like a madman, screaming that this was the only way he could become Lord of Snowpine, demanding Hans swear loyalty. When Hans refused, Everett placed that blood-red necklace right onto the knight's neck. Even for just a few seconds, it was long, enough to force the words straight from Hans's mouth. A true knight must keep his vow. Once spoken, Hans belonged to the Ocel family, and Elijah was now the only Ocel left. Slowly, Hans surrendered to this brutal truth. Meanwhile, far outside Snow Pine Town, my own camp was already digging in. 14 of my squires, led by their captain, were using whips to force slaves to dig trenches, but Ali was not among them. I had sent my clever slave boy away as a spy, and in his place, Little Martin had taken over leadership of the final team. My 300 people were split into 15 small teams. Each team had 4 leaders with 5 members under them. We used a system of collective responsibility. If one man ran away, his entire team would be punished, along with the team leaders standing right above them. This made escape almost completely impossible. These settlers had been training since the end of winter, so they were no longer helpless peasants. We had no proper weapons for everyone, though, so we sharpened cedar sticks instead, hardening them over fires to make long, sturdy spears. And believe me, do not underestimate these simple tools. Most armies in this age are just armed farmers anyway. Just one spear thrust can punch a fatal hole. Smearing them in foul mud or filth pretty much guarantees infection and death. But I held off on that because my scouts reported Elijah's army was mostly Snowpine townsfolk. With few real cultists around, those men were quite valuable. Maybe their lords pay massive ransoms for them, or I could just claim them as war spoils. So how did I know all this was coming? It actually started with that hidden dagger. My panel showed me its true nature right away. It was a cursed cult weapon, designed to stir deep anger and madness in whoever touched it. Crafty enough to spark wars between baronies. Right after that banquet where Elijah literally stabbed me, I spilled everything to my father Raymond, and we have been quietly planting spies in Snowpine ever since then. But the Brotherhood also put spies all over our Brighton lands. Luckily my panel let me find them one by one, and remove them in total secret. My father never warned Baron Otto though. The weaker neighbors grew. Brighton became way safer. These lands once belonged to our Garcia family anyway, a long time ago, but Viscount Brighton Garcia had to sell them off, just to raise quick cash for expansion back then. Our purple cedar trees were still pretty young, and almost all magical materials had to be bought directly from the main family. Deep inside the purple cedar forest. See, the Garcia family never gives land to heirs. If they live too close together, that only leads to brothers brutally killing brothers, wiping out their bloodline. Look at the other side. Elijah rides proudly wearing his shining silver armor, carrying a pretty fine iron magic sword. The Ocel family banner with its pine snow tree flutters proudly in the wind. He even copied our old Garcia crest pattern. But without our magical plants, it literally means nothing. Meanwhile, Priest Everett walks at the head of the army on foot. He wore heavy plate armor, carrying a massive hammer. Most clergy had poor backgrounds, never learning how to ride horses. But Everett passed his trials and grew strong. Rivaling any knight, he could march at the front with true dignity. Using threats and empty promises, Elijah gathered 800 people, dragging along men, women, and children. But many who saw through the cult fled instead. 800 versus 300, terrifying odds. Yet I was ready as they crossed the hills. They spotted my camp in the distance. 300 soldiers under a black banner, bearing the purple cedar emblem. They were busy finishing outward-pointing wooden spikes. Wait, Everett sensed a trap. It felt like the enemy expected their arrival. The priest hesitated right there. Their usual style was to poison, trick, and run. They never charged directly into prepared defenses. Had Baron Otto not fallen for this exact type of straight attack, but Elijah spotted my long black hair, standing right at the front of my line. Instantly, rage boiled inside him at my brown eyes and noble bearing. He slammed his iron helmet over his head, screaming a war cry like his dead father. Charge with me for Baron Elijah. Knight Hans, bound by his forced oath, could not stop him. A knight must follow his lord to war. He spurred his horse forward too. Priest Everett cursed loudly at them. Fools, everyone stay back and wait for orders. But Elijah was already racing right toward me. Mad eyes locked onto my face. Get ready, because the trap was about to snap shut. And this time, I would be the one deciding how it all ended. Elijah charged at me completely alone, screaming out that I was a coward. His desperate voice cracked across the field, ranting about the cruel reality of war, his family blood, while I was still playing childish games with peasants. And he became a real man. He wanted me to step out and fight fairly, just like I promised back at the banquet, halting his horse about 100 meters from my men, behind his lowered metal faceplate. He was smirking and I knew his true game. If I accepted that challenge, he would signal Knight Hans, Priest Everett, and his 3 knight-level generals to charge out, ganging up for against 1. A pretty clever trap, but we see right through it. I just sat quietly on my bench, letting him yell for 10 whole minutes. Then I snapped my fingers. A servant knelt right beside me, holding a silver tray and elegant porcelain cup. I pushed up my helmet plate and slowly sipped some hot tea, making sure both sides heard me clearly. I said, "This is as smooth as Lolita." And then I smiled. That fine porcelain was my only real treasure. My father had handed it down for me to sell in the city. But today, it served a much better purpose. The drink itself was barely even real tea. Being a second son meant I could never afford leaves. But it sure looked expensive, and that was plenty. Elijah's throat was already burning from all that screaming, seeing me casual with luxury cups, while bringing up his fiancée, right before every single peasant living in Snowpine, sent him into pure rage. The local peasants would definitely gossip about their lord now. He was already questioning whether Lolita had actually stayed loyal to him. That doubt ate him alive. Turning right around, he roared at Priest Everett to order the army forward, threatening to kick the priest off his land. Everett just stared at the riding fool, and finally ordered the charge. But no horseman dared charge alone into my lines, unless there actually was no ambush, or so Everett thought. Our camp looked exactly like what it seemed. 300 settlers holding sharp sticks. Knight Luke stood right beside me, wearing a simple gray robe over chain mail without a helmet, looking exactly like a farmer. But my father had sent him disguised as my secret protection. As Elijah's main army finally marched close, I pulled back my purple cedar bow and fired 2 arrows infused with inner energy. Ding ding. Both arrows slammed into his horse, and the beast screamed, crashing down hard, throwing Elijah straight to the dirt. The night hounds had seen enough combat to roll away, and let me tell you, Elijah looked totally pathetic down in the dirt. There is an old, true story on this continent about a king who got kicked in the stomach by a panicked horse, dying from a ruptured bowel before he could even activate his aura. Death is incredibly fast, and it never cares about titles. Because of my deep, personal grudge with Elijah, as long as that bastard was still breathing, I refused to waste my arrows on anyone else. But get this, the real shocker was hiding inside our tents. 30 elite archers suddenly leapt out in perfect unison. These were the legendary Garcia Bauman, specially loaned to me by my father. My family is renowned for our archery, and these guys had survived brutal, real wars. Right then, war horns kept blaring from inside our camp, utterly confusing the enemy about our numbers. Our arrows rained down like a deadly storm on Elijah's army. The terrified Snowpine townsfolk forced to the front, who pushed forward with pitchforks and sticks, screamed in terror and tried to flee everywhere. The cruel cultists behind them instantly slashed at the runners. But those few zealots couldn't stop 800 panicked peasants. The front line vanished, leaving the wicked cultists completely exposed in the open. I gave a simple order: spears up. Squad leaders must report in every 20 seconds. No talking about casualties or running away. Morale-shaking talk was completely banned. My 15 squires and their units gripped their cedar spears tight. Priest Everett saw the tide turning and bolted backward while he had time. Years of running made him incredibly fast. Honestly, that was how he became a priest in the first place, outrunning every single disaster. He screamed for his zealots to charge and kill me, begging Elijah to avenge his dead father, claiming I did something horrible to Lolita. Even as he lied, though, he ripped off his stolen plate armor to run lighter. But here is where the real hammer drops. My father, Baron Raymond, had been waiting near Snowpine Town this entire time. He charged forward with 2 knights and 10 cavalrymen, riding impossibly fast. Their war horses foamed at the mouth, eyes bloodshot from a dangerous drug they were fed, which dramatically shortens their lives. For one last, desperate sprint, only battle-hardened veterans ride like that. Everett saw black dots rushing his way, and absolutely panicked. Meanwhile, Elijah was still charging straight for me. He lost his horse, but not his absolute madness. Normal arrows could not pierce that silver armor of his, and I was not carrying a heavy hammer. Luke warned me, do not take his sword head-on. See, Elijah wielded his dead father's enchanted iron sword. In all of Britain, only my own father owned a weapon like that. Raising knights is the single most expensive thing a poor, noble family could do. My settlers screamed, scrambling aside, clearing a path for the madman. Elijah felt unstoppable, roaring out, "Gonzalo, accept the judgment of the Holy Lord." Then, splash, he plunged like a heavy stone into the pit I prepared. 3 meters deep and masked with dry leaves, completely impossible to escape. His armored cultists just stood frozen. They watched their baron sink instantly, and their spirits broke. Most of Snowpine's forces never even reached my front line. They ran, surrendered, or begged for mercy. but my archers had very clear orders. Kill the cultists. My squires had to capture the enslaved farming folk. Cultists were worthless, but hostages brought ransom. Those simple villagers, we could sell them back later. Then I yelled my next order. Pour now. Martin and the helpers put on gloves. They grabbed heavy iron pots, filled with boiling water and stinging nettles. They poured it right down, straight through the slit in Elijah's helmet. He was staring straight up, looking for a way out. The boiling water hit his face directly. He shrieked like a dying beast, ripping off his armor and helmet, desperately clawing at his own skin to scrape those stinging leaves away. Can you believe he just dreamed of killing me, rescuing Lolita, then joining his blood cult? Now he is just curled up, twitching helplessly in that pit. He had never felt true physical agony before. I surrender. I will pay the ransom. This is Snowpine's true lord. I can pay. Save me, Gonzalo. Please save me, but I just ordered his capture. Look, I really wanted to enjoy watching him squirm, but we still had fleeing enemies to round up. Before my father arrived, I had very strategic reasons to spare Elijah. On paper, he was already Snowpine's baron. He just needed the official scroll. Since I had no royal title of my own, I had absolutely no legal right to execute him. Only Father Rory and the High Lords had that power. Killing him in the heat of battle, that is entirely different. But executing a captured noble equal. Even a guy like me had to play by that rule. Honestly, even if there were 0 witnesses, executing him right away was out of the question. My border knights desperately needed cash. One quick burst of purple magic could blow him straight to hell, but I wanted his ransom filling my pockets first. Getting reincarnated had finally taught me some patience. First, drain him of every gold coin. Then, he can die. His wealth would build my empire while he rotted away. A wicked smirk crept onto my face. I completely trusted my father, Baron Raymond, to handle Elijah's final punishment the right way. He was both a great dad and a ruthless lord, and I had just gifted him one incredibly pricey prisoner. Priest Everett finally reached the castle gate, screaming at his cultists to let him inside. He barely managed to outrun our riders by just 100 meters. Inside, his loyal cultists, killers with innocent blood staining their hands, moved fast. They started pushing the massive iron gates open for him. Suddenly, a sharp, ringing snap cut through. My father drew his bow back like a crescent. The rearward trembled, and the arrow whistled through the cold air. It slammed directly into Everett's exposed back, tearing right through his unarmored flesh to pierce his heart. The priest stiffened and dropped dead. He was gone in seconds. Talk about instant karma. Baron Raymond was legendary for having the absolute best aim in the entire region. Our family bloodline carries the pride of elite, godlike archers. The exact moment their priest died, those panic-stricken cultists slammed the gate shut, completely shutting out several of Everett's closest allies. The rest of those so-called loyal followers were only truly loyal to Priest Everett himself, not their comrades beside them. Betraying their brothers for some holy cause was just their style. The abandoned soldiers were instantly pinned down by our rain of arrows. Before dark, our forces had completely surrounded the entire Snowpine Castle. We set up camp, and my father turned to ask me, if you were in his shoes, what's your next move? His voice has a pretty sharp, challenging edge to it. Still busy rounding up the fleeing serfs. But I answered him instantly. A standard siege and encirclement is the safe choice, slowly starving them out. But if we wait, the neighboring barons will recover and show up to claim a share of our victory. I suggest we try negotiating first. If that fails, we launch a fake attack in the afternoon, just to exhaust them, then hit them with a real raid past midnight. My father presses me, what about the worst-case scenario? Any backup plan? I answer firmly. I plan to lead that night attack myself. If it fails, well, then it's my father's problem. He doesn't stop me. Without that kind of courage, what kind of knight would I even be? Years ago on the battlefield, my father led his brothers in a desperate charge. As a veteran longbowman, he knows I have for my own reasons to lead this raid. This is war, not a cozy game between a baron and his son. After battle, loot gets divided strictly by merit, not by blood ties. If it were any other way, my father's veterans would have lost their loyalty long ago. What about my own achievements so far? The 300 settlers who managed to hold the line, and chasing down the retreating enemies, including Elijah, but those 30 elite archers, who sniped the main cultists actually belonged to my father. Plus, Knight Luke defeated Hans. Most importantly, my father himself personally executed the cult leader. That was easily the decisive blow. If I want a real slice of the rewards, I need a real victory of my own. A successful night assault would belong to me alone. Of course, I would never tell my father I had inside help. My plan is to exaggerate the castle's difficulty. To increase my share, the crying child gets the milk. But my father points out one detail I missed. We need to send cavalry to Count Terence immediately, to the governor of Valen province, carrying a report of the battle. This letter needed to show how brutal the clash was, and make it clear our men were stuck, besieging the castle, meaning no reinforcements could go to the southeast. My father sat right down at the desk, and started writing on rough parchment paper, choosing his words pretty carefully as he went. And suddenly, I saw right through the Count's game. He'd waited until spring to summon us for a reason, and we were definitely not going to walk into whatever trap he was planning. After midnight, outside the fortress walls, a tiny voice whispered, "Hey, big brother, wake up, big brother." A young slave boy gently shook the sleeping cultist. The guard jolted wide awake, completely ready to beg for mercy for sleeping. But then he saw it was only a kid, and growled. He swore he had only closed his eyes for a second. The young slave acted quite confused, and claimed his boss told him to take over the shift. The cultist just shoved him aside, barked at him to stand watch right now, and stumbled off toward the main barracks to get some sleep. But it was a lie. My clever spy had literally walked himself straight into the guard post on the fortress wall. He knew his position very well. The other knights and servants serving me were born as serfs, so his slave status made them quite distant. He knew he had to prove his worth to fit in. Tonight was his chance. He peeled off his loose coat. Wrapped around his tiny, slender body was a coil of thick hemp rope. That was his trick, being so incredibly small. Even a massive bundle of rope didn't show at all. He tied the rope tightly to the stone wall, letting it drop quietly down the outside. Below came the soft signal, cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. 17 figures wrapped in black slowly scaled up from the wall's base, clad in spiked climbing boots. Once the first two elite climbers scaled the summit, they dropped 2 more ropes. Soon, heavy armor and weapons were hauled right up. Group by group, our climbers scaled Yorick Lyle, Little Martin, and the rest of my squires, including Kafka, Elbin Dillon, Yorkin Taylor, Marcus Ryden, Vikia Roger, Rowan Milo, along with Knight Luke and myself. Even young Ollie wore armor this time, looking just like a tiny iron can. This gear wasn't actually ours, though. We had scavenged every piece directly from the battlefield, with my father's clear permission, promising to return everything once the job was done. "Luke, watch over them for me," I whispered. Luke nodded solemnly. Honestly, even without my command, he would protect these boys with his life. The veteran knight knew their hard-working families incredibly, from old Martin the butler to the lowest waste cleaners among them. The plan was dead simple. Luke and the majority of the squires would secure the outer wall, forcing the massive gate wide open, so my father's main army could charge right in. Meanwhile, Lyle and I would sneak straight into the main keep, bashing the outer gate down by raw force. Would require a heavy battering ram or some high-tier knight. We had neither, but get this, I had a massive advantage inside. I knew the layout of a typical baron's keep better than any cultist ever could, having spent my entire childhood in Brighton, and almost all these lower-level strongholds share identical structures. Brighton's keep was simply bigger, since my own grandfather had been a wealthy viscount, yet Lyle possessed an even rarer edge. Growing up as the child of the waste cleaners, he knew every single hidden nook, servant pathway, and secret passage inside this massive fortress. After all, those cultists had only occupied it for a few days. In their whole lives, while he spent his childhood crawling through forgotten, dark corners, we cleared out the cultists on our path, without making a single sound. Then, the two of us quietly slipped inside. They weren't actually going in to save the Baron. But get this, they only wanted that family treasure. See, every family had their own secret vault, filled with heirlooms and gold. Gonzalo had only been inside once before, right during his promotion tonight. That was a memory he'd never forget. How well he could build up his new territory depended entirely on this. If he snagged the Ozier family treasure, it would all be his. As for Baron Raymond asking questions later, he'd probably blame it on those cultists. Otherwise, Gonzalo wouldn't be this eager. Taking crazy risks just wasn't his style. They quietly reached the banquet hall, slaying 2 cultists along the way. Baron Raymond's. Inside, the main floor had a massive hall, split right down the left and right. The brightly lit side was the kitchen, and from there upward. Each floor was a private bedroom for the nobles. Warm air from the fireplace rose up, heating every single noble room. Each room had its own toilet, built right on a small hanging balcony. Waste would just fall straight down outside, and the poor sanitation workers had to clean those messy walls daily. Seriously, cesspit assassins, not a real thing here. Around the Baron's castle, villagers and night guards can clearly see the walls. Climbing assassins would have zero footholds. Even using spikes to climb up would be too slow and easily spotted. Only the highest nobles face that danger, since their complex castles look nice and are completely free from nasty filth. Behind the main fortress walls, they always build an extra barrier. Naturally, guards hate patrolling those tight, hidden spaces inside, because they are full of foul, stinky waste. That is exactly how cesspit assassins operate. They slide right through the cracks between both walls, giving the wealthy nobles a disgusting surprise. Beneath the kitchen, the basement usually serves as a dungeon. They do this to stop their prisoners from freezing to death and ruining a fat ransom. Just across from that massive banquet hall, the first floor holds the main dining room, where the nobles eat daily. Directly above sits the Grand Council chamber. Inside kind-hearted Cantor Castle's Grand Council room, Gonzalo earned 500 gold coins. The top floor usually serves as a study or library. It's the highest, safest, and brightest spot. And that is Gonzalo's target right now. By now, they had killed several cult patrols. Outside, the sounds of fighting grew louder. No more sneaking around. They charged straight up the stairs. Gonzalo's silver armor was practically invincible here. In this tight space, he used Alia's magic iron sword, stabbing straight through the heart. Tight spaces made swinging heavy weapons impossible. Plate armor is absolutely unbeatable unless you get stuck. These two iron cans fought their way up, leaving a trail of bodies behind. Reaching the top door was still completely intact. Quite a miracle, considering it had no handle. Looking exactly like a secure treasure vault, Gonzalo searched the area for ages, but couldn't find it. He tried smashing it open with force. Failed. What a pity. If I only interrogated Alia, he'd tell me exactly where the mechanism is. That way, the treasure is mine. Right then, a female voice echoed from inside. Gonzalo, Lilith. The door slowly creaked open. Lilith and her maid had been hiding inside all day. Since yesterday morning, Lilith followed her father right into the castle. Ilya was dying to show off his family heirloom to his fiancée. But then, absolute chaos tore through the castle. Lilith was ready. She already memorized where the hidden mechanism was, and quickly slipped inside the Oger family treasury. And honestly, Lilith is incredibly beautiful. Otherwise, all those lords from nearby lands would never be chasing after her. She has long, wavy blonde hair with cute bangs, and her striking silver eyes shine bright like the stars. She even has those cute little dimples, but right now, her dress is pretty messy. Definitely from escaping that sudden, frantic rush. She tightly clutches a delicate jewelry box. As a noble, Gonzalo instantly knew this box wasn't the family treasure, but rather Lilith's personal dowry. Packed with gold and precious jewels, Gonzalo knew that if he stole her dowry, it would be incredibly tough for a high-born girl to ever find another husband. Her family would never provide a second dowry, and some desperate girls might end it all. He also knew a relationship was pretty much impossible. She had zero desire to rot in frontier lands. Her dream was to become the Baroness of Matsuyama. She did not care who the Baron was. Lilith pointed toward a corner. These two childhood friends of hers understood her exact meaning instantly. They used a long sword to pry up the heavy stone floor, exposing a rectangular iron chest. Gonzalo and Lair worked together to lift the heavy chest. Inside lay the massive fortune amassed by the Oger family. Gonzalo quickly took a peek inside. Just look at all this crazy loot. Huge gold candlesticks and highly valuable ceremonial lamps, likely stolen from other baronies. Their baron could never afford these things, let alone display them openly in the castle. Too bad there were no magical items. There was no time to hesitate now. A massive fight was brewing outside. They needed to haul that chest to camp immediately. Lair just wasn't strong enough to survive alone. It was absolute chaos down there. I will go gather some backup, Lair. You stay right here and protect Lilith. And keep that precious treasure safe too, Gonzalo silently vowed. I will protect Miss Lilith like my own wife. Amy, even if it costs my life. Please come back to me safely, Gonzalo. I will be waiting, Lilith promised. She walked up and gave him a deep kiss. Without lingering, she quickly put on her silver armored helmet. Her special transformation sequence activated, and she rushed straight down those stairs. She found 0 cultists left inside. Only dead bodies lay scattered everywhere. The entire cult had rushed outside to join the fight. They knew if the outer wall gate fell, all would be lost. Desperate cultists even jumped from the wall, shattering their own legs to escape. Peering through the helmet visor was tough, making things pretty blurry. Yet Gonzalo felt a strange pull. After taking down 2 cult members, he scanned around and finally saw the horror. Out on the gallows, Father Rory was nailed to the cross. He was completely red with blood and silent. But look at this, a cultist climbs the gallows, desperate to sever Rory's head and run. With that prize, this lowlife would be promoted to high priest. Realizing their battle was hopeless, these cowards only thought about their own escape. Purely for selfish gain, Father Rory had saved Gonzalo's life once, always carrying a special healing potion. In a crisis, it could fetch a great price, or keep him alive in battle. The treasure vault door remained secure, and that locked chest was going nowhere. Gonzalo hacks down the cross. The nearby cultists had already scrambled away, knowing that anyone seeing Gonzalo in his tinkin armor would immediately run to stay alive. He pulls out the nails, helping Father Rory up into the dark night. Gonzalo finally sees why Father Rory cannot speak. His mouth is sewn shut. He uses a dagger to carefully slice it open. Name Rory, level 2. Age 63, strength 5. Knowledge 15, strategy 3. Management 8, military 1. Spirit 5.7, none. Favorability 80. Now, the system screen makes perfect sense. The priest is barely hanging on, yet his strength still shows 5, showing that no matter his physical state, stats always display their peak values. For outsiders, it displays their favorability level, rather than loyalty, like with Elijah, whose score was -100. Whispering about a potion, Father Rory fades out, while pointing toward the door, and Gonzalo looks right toward the entrance. Realizing the healing potion is on that priest, wearing red robes by the gate, he quickly carries Father Rory to safety, before charging right into the chaos. The main gate is completely overrun as barren. Raymond's soldiers flood into the area. Gonzalo spots his 15 iron cans, and immediately orders them to storm the castle. They have to secure the treasure chest before the main army arrives. He searches the body of the red-robed priest, and pulls out a glowing green tube. Drinking it down, he feels familiar. This glass vial is incredibly sturdy. Even after being trampled under multiple heavy boots, it remains completely unbroken. Item name, Special Healing Potion, Green Quality. Item info, crafted by Father Rory of the Light Church. Heals all external physical wounds. It works wonders on deep internal damage. It boosts energy but is useless against toxins, or any magical sickness. This potion is almost unbeatable in battle, a perfect cure for outer wounds. Sadly, it does nothing for poison or disease. If it did, Father Rory wouldn't sell it for only 100 gold. That price is pretty reasonable. Gonzalo quickly handed the bottle to Father Rory. Finally, Father Rory could talk again. Thank you, Gonzalo. You are an incredibly gifted kid. These words made Gonzalo realize exactly why he heard that calling. Gonzalo actually had to hold points of mental power, and since Father Rory sent a desperate mental plea, since his lips were sewn shut, preventing speech, it is a shame I must become a pioneer knight to build up my family legacy, so I cannot join the clergy. Father Rory sighed, yet he kept pushing Gonzalo to join anyway. Priests of that light church are just so stubborn in the end. Father Rory could not convince Gonzalo. Instead, he suggested Gonzalo stay some days in Sunchao lands, where Father Rory could teach him valuable skills, mostly things to help him lead his wild expeditions. What could Gonzalo do? The priest made an irresistible offer. In this era, real knowledge is the ultimate treasure right now. Now look, Baron Raymond enters the outer courtyard. This chaotic night attack was finally wrapping up, but the last phase is always tricky. Hunting down fleeing cultists to stop them from bringing ruin to the barony. And yet, Raymond had already stationed soldiers outside the gates, ready to trap the cultists. These slippery rats were quite good at escaping. Finally, they sent heavy cavalry straight to the Songshua border to guard against any other invading cultist armies. At dawn, the castle walls were completely surrounded by cultists and captured innocent peasants. These miserable enemy slaves did not need a trial. They simply became just another piece of war plunder. Check this out. Ilya is judged first. Bound tightly, he was forced to kneel on the dirt. His eyes were blind, his lips trembling violently, as he desperately mumbled his pleas. I am Baron Songshua and I will pay any ransom. Do not kill me, but Raymond stood up, raising his heavy sword. Confess your heresy. Did you kill Otto? It was not me, it was Priest Everett. Elia realized right then he was going to die. He repeatedly smashed his face against the dirt, desperately begging for mercy before they took his head. Father Laurie chimed in from his bench. Yesterday, he saw Elia slice off his brother's head on the pyre, trying to force the knight to admit who he was. Baron Songshua's murderer. According to the kingdom's law, heretics serving evil gods face death. Church law also demands the death penalty. I, Baron Raymond Garcia, pronounce you guilty, Raymond declared. I can pay the ransom, please. Blood suddenly sprayed out as Elia's head was held high. Gonzalo watched with deep regret. With that ransom gone, who is Elia's closest male relative? Baron Raymond shouted to the crowd. Porter was crouching in a corner of the outer yard. Hearing this, he scrambled forward and yelled excitedly. It is me, I am the fourth son of Baron Otto. Porter practically leapt with pure joy. Such incredible luck had suddenly found him. Born to a simple maid, he had absolutely no inheritance rights. His current job was just a farmhand at some manor, owned by the late Songshua lord, living far from the castle's clean water. Plus, he wasn't actually poisoned by those deadly blood toxins. But Ilya completely forgot he existed. Or maybe Ilya never saw him as a brother. That's why he survived. Still, Baron Otto only has 3 sons. Where did this 4th son even come from? Baron Raymond frowned. He kept close track of his neighbor's children. My mother was just a maid, Sir Porter begged. His entire future hung on Baron Raymond's next words. Would he finally be treated like a respected noble lord? Or go right back to cleaning horse stables for others? Everything rested on what Baron Raymond decided today. Well, we just call that a bastard child. Baron Raymond cold-bloodedly corrected him. He enforced the rules strictly to protect his power. Yes, I am a bastard, Lord. Porter knelt down, cowering in absolute fear. He desperately wanted to be recognized as a noble lord. But Raymond wasn't buying it easily. He had countless commoners begging on their knees every day. Across his territory, he scanned the official lineage of the Oger family tree. Still, nothing he saw satisfied him. Remember to pay your ransom to me, Baron Porter. When Raymond uttered those life-changing words, Porter felt like he was hearing a divine holy call. He wept with pure joy. But for that ransom, squeezing Snowy Pine territory dry was his plan. 2 years of heavy taxing would pay it off. That's just how nobles operate, so he'd do the same. Meanwhile, his other illegitimate half-brother, the guy was currently shivering in a horse manure corner, clutching cheap straw, gnashing his teeth together in absolute fury, cursing the fact he hadn't been born first. By kingdom law, inheritance was highly strict. Snowy Pine should have gone to the closest relatives. Within the Oger bloodline, bastards got nothing. Since Snowy Pine borders the Brighton territory, Raymond just needs a highly obedient neighbor, not some random noble popping up out of nowhere. And Porter's questionable identity. That was incredibly easy. High nobles are master manipulators of the law, bribing priests, even forging papers about Baron Potter's mother remarrying. To Baron Otto, Gonzalo learned today that there are plenty of ways to handle this. He worried that if Elijah died, the ransom money would vanish. But it seems he was overthinking things. The second prisoner brought up for judgment was Knight Hans. He just stared blankly and said nothing, keeping his head low. It was like he had lost literally everything. His faith, his family, his warhorse, his sword. Even drawing breath felt like absolute torture. Name is Hans, level 2. Age 38, bravery is 8. Knowledge 2, strategy 1. Management 2, military 5, spirit 0. Traits, absolutely none. Favorability, 30. Gonzalo was genuinely surprised. This was the first time he had ever seen 30 favorability. Usually, favorability for cultists was minus 100 towards Gonzalo, and the captured peasants ranged from minus 10 to minus 50. You see, this meant he held 0 real resentment towards Gonzalo at all. Was it possible he did not hate Gonzalo for killing his master? Tell me your crime. Knight Hans, Baron Raymond said with deep regret. They had actually served in the same army once, but they were never close comrades. I am guilty, Knight Hans answered with a hollow stare. What is your crime? Raymond asked. Knight Hans slowly raised his chained hands above his head, his arms trembling slightly. The other knights there knew exactly what this meant. He was choosing to end his own life, a warrior's final way to clear his shame. But here is the real catch with poor Knight Hans. As a heretic on the battlefield, losing and paying a fine was pretty acceptable. But turning to worship dark, evil gods was an absolutely unforgivable sin. Hans was guilty of helping heretics fight, and potentially turning to evil gods. Right then, the most important figure spoke up. Father Rory sat weakly in his chair, barely strong enough to stand and address everyone. Elijah and those heretic priests forced Knight Hans. I witnessed it myself, but aiding heretics is still a crime. Baron Raymond quietly conferred with Father Rory, then delivered his verdict. I, Baron Raymond Garcia, pronounce that Knight Hans is sentenced to serve the church for 10 years and pay a hefty ransom to Baron Potter. Do you agree with this ruling? Raymond asked, turning to the man behind him. Yes. Yes, Potter. He knelt on the cold ground, completely dazed. But he quickly agreed with Raymond. Now he finally knew who ran everything, and listened meekly like an honest child. See, Gonzalo got the real strategy here. After all, Hans still belonged to the Osal family, so he needed Potter's direct approval. Normally, a knight's lord would protect him, or trade favors, just to lower his sentence and pay the ransom. Once these two knights were judged, the other barons' knights hadn't aided any heretics. They and the barons were thrown directly into the dark cellar downstairs. Only heretics and peasants were left, but excluding the slaves. Now it was Father Rory's turn to act. He summoned nearby priests to gather at the castle to help him. Honestly, it's a miracle. The priests of the Church of Light are incredibly tough. Yesterday, they were nailed to heavy crosses, whipped, and hung all day with their mouths sewn shut. Today, they sit in chairs judging heretics. Gonzalo quietly followed Baron Raymond deep into the main castle building, where 6 barons were still waiting in the hall. Gentlemen, it's time we discuss your ransom, Baron Raymond announced with a massive grin, looking like he just shaved years off his age. The barons instantly start cursing, screaming and slamming cups, but it means absolutely nothing. Both hands and feet are heavily chained. They stand zero chance against Raymond, a guy in full armor leading an entire army. Right now they are just Raymond's helpless captives, dragged away right from Elijah. Otherwise, why pull off a midnight castle raid? They could have just let those cultists do the torturing and execute the 6 of them. Nobody was coming to save them anyway. In fact, their sons who skipped the wedding probably secretly wanted these 6 barons dead. Mobilizing an entire rescue squad to save them seemed like a massive waste of precious time. Honestly, those kids were probably praying for their dads to die, locked inside that dark dungeon. Raymond's personal knights and elites, they always demand hefty hazard pay when going to war. Plus, they expect a cut of the battlefield loot, depending on their actual effort. All of this adds up to serious gold. Gonzalo watches this pathetic bickering. He knows it is just a cheap negotiation tactic. Eventually they will agree on some crazy ransom price, and sit tight until their families send gold for their release. Growing pretty tired of the noise, Gonzalo heads upstairs. Yet, he can still hear elite nobles laughing up there. I mean, do these people ever have real problems? The captured barons will pay up sooner or later. Highborns do not end up sleeping in tents or out in the cold. Raymond will let them maintain their dignity by housing them in palace rooms. There might even be another massive feast happening tonight. With so many people already gathered here, servants are ordered to keep bringing food right into the castle of Songshua. Wealthy highborn ladies, young heirs and debutantes singing together, dancing and having a blast. Gonzalo literally grew up with most of these people, thinking that keeping contacts close is always a smart play. He goes to chat since he is basically their idol now. If Gonzalo hadn't left to expand his territory, all the single, noble girls would be whispering with their families about whether they could offer a much larger dowry just to marry Raymond. The baron and the ladies both loved handsome nobles with dark hair and pale skin, who could win battles and lead night raids, way better than kids who only cared about fighting duels. For the next 100 years, this epic war, and trust me, the nobles will never stop talking. The free citizens and serfs of Songshua will even sing heroic stories about it, like bards singing legends. They will tell of Baron Raymond leading his army to victory against the evil cult, and rescuing 6 barons and a priest. They will also whisper about his son, Gonzalo, defeating his traitor brother, Elijah, and their daring night raid on the castle. And don't forget the story of Porter, who went from stable boy to actual baron. By chance, Gonzalo headed to the private lounge, where only Lilith and her personal maid waited. The maid wisely left, leaving Gonzalo alone with her. I hate that stable boy. Lilith muttered, her eyes red and voice trembling. She wasn't crying over marriage. Only for her father. The kind old Baron Kent who had just passed. To high-born youth raised on banquets and balls. Only educated elites are considered true peers. Even wrapped in the finest wool clothes, Porter still reeked of horse manure and the stables. It made Lilith feel sick. And honestly, you know how brutal elite parties are. Baron Porter would constantly embarrass himself, since he lacked any proper noble manners. And as his wife, Lilith would also be mocked. Gonzalo pulled Lilith close to comfort her. At least you became a baroness, and you can teach him to behave like nobility. And besides, you do want to expand, right? Lolita grabbed Gonzalo's neck, kissing him deeply. Her hair smelled sweet. At least I truly loved someone, Lolita firmly declared. They tangled together, sharing a moment of pure, natural springtime intimacy. But ultimately, Lolita refused to go with him to expand territory. Her pampered childhood made surviving in untamed wild lands basically impossible. Besides, compared to a knight's wife, you see, a status meant absolutely everything. Nobles knew a secure, long-term comfort was far more vital than fleeting pleasure. The odds of successfully conquering new territory were only 1 in 10, a risk she couldn't afford. Frankly, she loved her high status much more. Youth is highly fleeting. Soon, even with a massive dowry, no young nobleman wanted her. She would have to settle for older nobles. Luckily, Baron Porter was a decent husband. In high society, cheating was pretty normal. Gonzalo had already forgiven the Baron. Back at Songshua Castle, Baron Raymond and the 6 other barons finalized the heavy ransom, including Baron Raymond himself. Everyone was drinking and celebrating inside. Baron Porter, hosting the party, he paid for the feast despite losing everything. But borrowing from other barons is easy. Porter believes he can squeeze it out of his serfs within just 2 or 3 years. But look outside, a grim line forms. Slaves were brutally whipped and driven straight toward Brighton's massive territory. These poor souls were Raymond's personal spoils. Nearby, Gonzalo's massive expedition camp was ready. 15 elite knights and Gonzalo gathered inside the main tent with young Martin. As commander, Gonzalo's immediate task after this victory was handing out rewards as fast as possible, based on their battlefield achievements. In Gonzalo's past, delaying rewards for soldiers is a fast track to mutiny. Even though his game interface tracked their loyalty, Gonzalo was not about to get reckless. It is simple, high loyalty during the day can turn to bitterness at night. They could easily turn on him. It is a real threat. He had 15 sets of fresh plate armor. Each cost 20 gold coins. Second-hand gear is cheaper, and damaged stuff is practically free. But that is just armor. An elite fighter needs much more. Padded cotton inner tunics, swords, heavy war hammers, and daggers. Add in bows, arrows, and shields, plus 2 to 3 horses with gear, not to mention 2 to 5 attendants. Gonzalo purchased all this from his father, Baron Raymond, using his hard-earned military merits. The total came to 300 gold coins. That was Gonzalo's absolute spending limit. Meanwhile, Baron Raymond demanded 500 gold coins in ransom from each of the 6 barons, including Potter. That meant 3,500. Now talk about a massive payday, right? Of course, he would not get it immediately. Most of the ransom would be paid over 2 to 3 years, using collateral. Besides, Baron Raymond had to support 3 genuine knights, over 10 elite cavalry troops, 30 archers, his 2 sons, and other extended family members. The upkeep costs were massive. Securing 300 gold coins in armor was a win. Still, Raymond had handed Gonzalo an entire expedition force. That left Brighton's lord facing a huge deficit. Now, those resources were needed to patch things up. Gonzalo knew it was smarter to invest in boosting his soldiers' combat skills instead of just handing out cash. Sure, the new plate armor was expensive, but he believed it was fully worth it. So, young Gonzalo made a choice. The 15 knight apprentices would purchase their own armor, paying in installments, tied to their future achievements on the battlefield. They earned the right to wear this armor, but to fully own it, they had to fight for young Gonzalo. Sure, they could use the gear, but making it theirs meant shedding blood for young Gonzalo. Gonzalo was a generous lord, but throwing everything at them might kill their drive to get stronger. So, paying in parts was honestly a genius move here. The 15 apprentices finally got their plated armor, and their faces lit up with pure, unadulterated joy. They gently touched the steel, like they were caressing a young girl's soft skin. Arlie strapped his set on, and it fit him flawlessly. He honestly expected to look completely ridiculous, but the perfect tailoring made him realize something. Gonzalo had personally handpicked this exact set for him. Arlie remembered this deeply. Meanwhile, Liu was stressed about growing. He was only 17 and still getting taller by the day. Armor this expensive might just go to waste. Fearful of outgrowing it and being left with nothing. But the moment he tried it on, there was plenty of breathing room. Talk about a huge relief. Gonzalo even had Lair's armor specially crafted extra tall. Knowing how tall his mother was, she was a remarkably tall slave woman. And back then, height wasn't seen as a positive trait, especially for slaves, where only a lowly stable hand might ever show interest in her. Next, Gonzalo's steward handed little Martin shiny gold coins and books. Martin really had no passion for warfare. He just followed Gonzalo blindly. They had been inseparable since childhood, understanding each other perfectly. These valuable books were taken straight from Songshua Castle. Baron Raymond would never let Gonzalo take them. To help grow his influence, so Gonzalo had to steal these treasures away himself. As for their weapons, each young man received a sturdy broadsword and shield. These were strictly second-hand gear, and definitely not freebies. They still belonged to Gonzalo, and the camp warehouse held plenty of bows and arrows, all belonging to Gonzalo. They were still pretty clumsy with bows, needing more training, while those 15 apprentices happily suited up in their new armor. Gonzalo yelled to get ready to assemble. Everyone instantly wiped away their smiles and rushed right out of their tents, forming quick groups to get the expedition ready. Gonzalo was quite happy with how disciplined those 15 apprentices actually were. 15 aides stood in a line, each leading 20 men right behind them, creating a completely solid square of exactly 300 soldiers. Gonzalo checked them, and honestly, they looked incredibly well organized. He roared out, "All team leaders, begin the head count." All 15 aides yelled out, "1." Then the men behind them shouted, 2, 3, up to 20. Once they hit 20, each aide took a step sideways, darting straight to the back of their lines, before rushing right back to the front, calling out, 20 men accounted for. Everyone is present and in line, Gonzalo ordered. Immediately, everyone moved, keeping exactly 1 meter of space, each soldier being about 45 centimeters wide. At the shoulders, the perfect square, stretching 20 meters wide and 28 meters long, appeared. Gonzalo gripped a list that little Martin had already checked, recording every runner who fled active combat. "Step forward," Gonzalo commanded sternly. The aides turned around and yelled, "Leaders, step up to identify the deserters." It was pretty much impossible for aides to fight while tracking 20 different men at once during active combat, so they split each squad of 20 into 4 team leaders, watching over just 5 men each. The aides also acted as key leaders, rapidly counting up all the deserters, 15 total, and mostly slaves. Gonzalo had only trained them temporarily, and for those aides at winter's end, holding a proper formation was tough, but doing it on the battlefield is quite different. But some still panicked and chose to run away. Now, those runners paid the price. The team leader gets exactly 10 whiplash, the group leader gets 20, and each runaway gets 50. Next time, execute them immediately, while their leaders get double the whipping. But get this, Gonzalo knows rewards and punishments go together. Military discipline is just like that. Gonzalo originally planned to make an example of them, but, seeing that despite knowing they would be punished, they still kept their formation perfectly intact, he let them off. So, the group leaders whipped the runaways, while the team leaders punished the group leaders, and the aides as team leaders whipped themselves. They actually whipped themselves even harder. Gonzalo kept reading from his official scroll. He listed those who helped crush the enemy lair. 1 soldier down, and then Yelich killed 12. Yelich killed 5. His list included everyone from elite knights and captains down to slaves. Kill 1 soldier, get 5 silver coins. Kill 1 armed peasant to earn 5 pounds of meat. Gonzalo then organized his troops into groups of 5. The team leader checked the squad members, while the group leader verified that team leader. Behind them all, little Martin and others watched to spot anyone trying to run away or fake battle achievements. Since Martin actually knew how to write, and hacking off ears was quite a messy way to record achievements. Let's be real, actual armies never used that method anyway. Across the entire continent of Atlantis, no kingdom actually paid their regular soldiers directly based on how many enemies they killed. Instead, They simply shared the war spoils. Commoners fought for their lord purely out of duty. If Gonzalo had not seized that Oger family treasure, honestly, there was no way he could pay those rewards. At most, just some meat. Otherwise, there was absolutely no cash left for rewards. 300 soldiers devoured food every day, entirely funded by Gonzalo's own personal coin. On the other side stood their real elite soldiers. Only Heir, through pure luck, managed to kill one. Most of the other enemies were completely wiped out by Baron Raymond's skilled archers and swift cavalry. Watch out, as they get stronger, more enemies will die. For now, the rewards are kept quite low. But going forward, they will never, ever be reduced. They will only rise. Gonzalo firmly believes that generous rewards will motivate his brave fighters. As battles increase, the rewards will grow even richer. To the common folk, enemies look like delicious bread. Drooling with greed, Gonzalo sat in his chair, personally handing out the meat. Everyone stepping up to receive their share, respectfully thanked their leader, young Master Gonzalo. Next, they brought out the casualty list. Though injured himself, he verified the names and distributed food. Because the cult priests fled so early, their army collapsed incredibly fast. The capable Elias only targeted Gonzalo, never fighting anyone else. The Night Hounds were merely pretending to fight, killing absolutely nobody. And get this, our side suffered 0 deaths in that first battle. Even during the second night raid, we had absolutely 0 casualties. Everyone wore iron armor, with Luke the Knight fiercely guarding them. To the cultists, this was a totally devastating defeat. A sea of sand. And Lu watched Ada happily pull out some meat and take a bite. Drooling with greed, they were only slaves, brothers from different mothers, all handpicked by Gonzalo. They could actually speak human tongue. Normally, slaves are given names so randomly, meaning the vast majority of them had no names. These select slaves were bred directly by Baron Raymond, handpicked from the absolute strongest men across his entire domain. He even married dozens of wives. And the slaves raised under this system are pretty beastly. Raymond gifted some of these slaves to Gonzalo. These brothers happened to be among them. Big Alu, blessed with incredible genetic advantages, had never eaten a decent meal. Yet he still managed to slaughter an armed farmer, earning himself a solid reward from young Gonzalo. Right now, they gather firewood in the forest. But those animals, along with fruit and fish, belong to the lords. They do not dare cut down trees, so they only scavenge for fallen branches. Gonzalo strictly ordered them to follow every rule. He really wants 0 trouble, especially over some settlers catching fish in the local river. Even near the Lord's land in this currently lawless, snowy territory, doing so is strictly forbidden. He wants these settlers used to obeying orders. Whatever young Master Gonzalo tells them to do, they obey. If Gonzalo does not say a word, absolutely no interfering. Once they reach Gonzalo's territory, how to build up the farmer's mindset and grow the economy can be sorted later. For now, they must respect the rules of the Volong area. Now, they need to hurry back and eat. And trust me, when they hear about food, these hungry slaves sprint faster than anyone. Smelling the meat, Alu drools with pure excitement, having dreamed of this smell all day. Little Martin holds a massive spoon and bangs on a large iron pot, making a loud metallic clang. Everyone is handed a bowl and some coarse bread. Everyone gets one. This is a direct gift from young Master Gonzalo. To reward your efforts. Alu cannot believe his ears. Everyone gets one ham I finally seen as a human. But as he hesitates, he falls behind. Azant sprints ahead and reaches the pot first. Azant proudly holds up a dark brown, coarse bread, flecked with raw grains and bran. It is a luxury he has never tasted before. Just catching a whiff, he can already smell the wheat. There is also a bowl of meat soup. Asan quickly rushes up to grab it, but little Martin hits him hard on the head with a spoon. He is not angry. He is quite used to being hit like this. Speak up, Asan. He rubs his head, trying to think of what to say. Suddenly, he recalls what Biga said when he got rewarded today, and he tries to copy him, saying thank you, Lord. He thinks this should satisfy little Martin. As long as he addresses him as Lord, it should work. But little Martin whacks Asan with the spoon again. This leaves Asan totally confused and wondering why. Calling him Lord failed this time, staring at the delicious hot soup right in front of him. Asan is so anxious he almost cries. Can you believe the only meat he'd eaten was earthworms? Alu quickly whispers from behind. Thank Lord Gonzalo. Yes, thanks, Lord Gonzalo. Little Martin finally hands the meat soup to Asan, and warns him that this is all thanks to Master Gonzalo. Once we reach the frontier, call him Lord Gonzalo, do you understand? Gonzalo wanted this. He kept emphasizing to his followers. To Gonzalo, a strict noble, rules are rules. He is a firm supporter of the class system. Meanwhile, the actual Baron Raymond remains inside the castle, dancing with some noble women. The poor Baroness had passed away many years ago, so Raymond has spent his time flirting around, now smelling the rich scent of the delicious meat. Asen loudly shouts his thanks to young Master Gonzalo. The hungry crowd behind him starts shouting at him. Hurry up, it is our turn. Only then does Asen finally leave. At night, Alu and the others sit around the campfire, playing a lively game of tossing a cloth. With 20 people in each team, they pass the cloth to the rhythmic beat of Captain Yalek. Whoever caught it last had to take the dreaded night watch. They played 10 rounds in total, and whoever caught the cloth the most times was on duty. Gonzalo had actually invented this game. It all started in winter, with 15 knights and their loyal attendants, meant to sharpen their math skills and build strong bonds through fun. And check this out, the team leaders soon learned the rules, and were enjoying it with the frontier villagers. Alu was having the absolute time of his life. As they played, he secretly swiped a chunk of coarse bread, and quickly stuffed it into his mouth, while quietly tracking who caught the cloth the most. Today, it's a tie between Ada and others. Ada caught it the most. No, you idiot. It's Aussie, you are all wrong. So who was it then? It's the captain. The captain caught it the most. Alu suddenly blurted it out. You can bet the entire team burst into roaring laughter. How could it possibly be the captain? Did he want a beating? Yalek awkwardly smiled. Tossing that cloth around was actually a bit tricky. Before long, he completely forgot who had caught it earlier. But Yalek was absolutely sure it was himself, since he had written the number 4 right in front of him. It honestly could not be more than that. He just had bad luck, saying, it's just me. If I lose, then I lose. I cannot cheat just because I am the leader tonight. I will stay on watch tonight. Alu smiled happily for the first time in his life. He felt so genuinely happy tonight, sipping on warm meat broth, eating coarse bread, and playing games with everyone. He rarely got to see his father, catching only a single glimpse from afar, while the man carried wood in a distant village. He was tall and looked just like a slave, but they said he was Alu's father. Whenever Alu corrected the foreman about the wrong wood count, he got whipped for it. Alu stopped caring. He understood. The Lord's things had nothing to do with him. Only when his mother asked if the wood count was right, would Alu carefully point out the actual mistakes, terrified that she might get whipped too. Today, Alu could loudly announce who passed the cloth most. He truly saw every single person there as family. 15 campfires lit up the expansion camp. Everyone clapped and sang silly songs. Naive and happy, firelight flickered in their eyes. Warm tears flowed freely amid all the laughter. At this exact moment, they all happily held hands, singing and dancing together. And now, watch how the other half lives. A lavish banquet, glowing with candlelight and flickering lamps, was happening. Guests eagerly flattered and complimented each other, their fake smiles creating a pretty sharp and glaring contrast. Meanwhile, inside the tent, Gonzalo and little Martin counted gold, coins and shiny valuables. Every single thing had to be written down. Even the rewards had to be carefully tracked, to compare later, tracking exactly who got less and who got more, and fixing any unfair gaps. All that looted treasure required careful recording. To stop theft, thieves rarely steal a lot at once, but taking a little each time, without any records, you would never even notice. Gonzalo had 678 gold coins. 100 of those came from Baron Raymond, for Gonzalo's older sister, to help her make some powerful connections. She had married into the royal city, landing a husband who was a declining, middle-aged noble. Her dowry was actually several times larger than Lilith's. Baron Raymond planned this out, to slowly expand his influence in the city. But he knew, his 2 sons would need to explore new lands. This was the Garcia family's ultimate goal. He secured his sister Matthew's marriage early on. Matthew was handpicked, a perfect fit for Gonzalo's rising expansion squad. She was pulling strings once again. She felt way more confident this round. And this was Gonzalo's very first time, gaining a real upper hand as the youngest son. Inside lay a gold table lamp snapped in 2, easily worth about 50 shiny gold coins, plus 4 gemstone cups, exactly fitting the 4 male heirs of the Osari family, each stamped with their crest on the bottom. But they definitely need a good wash. adding 15 more gold coins per cup, along with tiny sacks of cinnamon and cloves. Hidden underneath it all is a roll of silk, kept safe under thick cloth. Just that thin roll alone would cost 30 gold coins at the very least. Gonzalo is a high noble, so Gonzalo knows this fair price is perfect for high-demand goods. But unfortunately there is no tea. Gonzalo was really hoping for a taste of home. Small delicate rings are piled in there too, alongside heavy gold necklaces, all marked with the Osari crest. Erasing those engravings would completely ruin the craft, tanking their market price instantly, including 678 coins. Check this out, the total value hits 950, probably under 1,000. If only Baron Otto had compensated them, leaving Gonzalo and Elijah broke after buying that high-tier promotion potion. Tonight, Gonzalo has doubts. Lilith and her private guards might have already messed with the chest. As for that shape-shifting silver armor, taken from Elijah for its unique traits, it won't fit anyone else. He could sell it to Baron Raymond, who could hire a magical smith to reforge it, but that takes too long. Gonzalo needs cash now, so he is keeping it for himself, to see if he can reforge it once the territory opens. This is the Iron Magic Sword, 1 courage, green tier quality item, a standard magic blade from the Augustine Kingdom, highly effective against armor, but the hilt bears the Osari family crest, and it is hard to remove, unless the entire hilt is destroyed. So for now, it is just a trophy. Once Baron Potter gets enough cash, Gonzalo can buy it back from him. The Green Blood Necklace, a highly dangerous magic item, crafted by the cult's Dark Blood Brotherhood, charms people temporarily, but long-term, it completely destroys their sanity. Selling this opally, completely impossible. Even listed on the black market, it would draw the Church of Light's attention. You probably think black markets sell everything, but in reality, the real masterminds are usually wealthy nobles, or even church bishops. They mainly use it to liquidate stolen goods, discreetly, but that never includes cult items. As for the serfs and cultists, who stole from the noble lord, and planned to sell them on the black market, that is just asking to have your head displayed on a spike at the gate. After counting up all this loot, Gonzalo slumped tiredly at his desk, and kept giving orders to little Martin. Help me register every single new settler. Use this format inside the record book here. Name, gender, age, and special skills. I know they probably do not know much, so ask plenty of questions during the process. Even if they can just gather mushrooms, call chickens, or bark like a dog, write it down. It might get tiring, so I will get a servant to assist. Thanks for your hard work on this. Young master, little Martin speaks up. I am not tired, it is just my duty. He admits he is not quite as capable as his older brother, Big Martin, so he must work harder. Little Martin says this, smiling gently. Gonzalo suggests waiting until their new settlement is stable, and then he will find him a wife. Gonzalo adds playfully. No, that will not do. You are not married yet, young master. Marrying first would not be proper at all. He quickly shakes his head, turning down the offer. Gonzalo says not to worry about it. Once they arrive, Gonzalo's word will be the law. Little Martin looks down. He feels pretty shy, since they grew up together. Yet here he is, feeling quite shy again. I want something bigger, little Martin confesses. He lowers his head even further. Gonzalo gets the message immediately. He tosses a silver cup at him. It hits his head. Go get some sleep. He notes it down as little Martin leaves. Alone, Gonzalo rolls out a sheepskin map. Watch as he plans his route. Their destination lies to the south, specifically, the southeastern August Kingdom. They will start from northwest Valen Province, then head straight for the southeastern Freeport. From there, they sail further south. They will restock at 3 different ports. Prices and local goods for each stop are detailed here. This valuable intel was sent by his older sister. Meth's capital connections are absolute gold. Her network is far better than any local baron's. Tucked away in Valen, without this data, he would be completely lost once he leaves Valen, relying only on old family journals, packed with outdated records from 100 years ago. Now he can plan quite carefully, and cut out all the useless baggage. Local buying saves quite a bit of coin. Brighton is not exactly a busy trade hub. Unlike real port cities, they will disembark at Sunrise Port, down in the Yalin province. We head south through the Fairmont Mountains, but here is the catch. See, most of these Fairmont Mountains are run by first-generation barons. They earned their titles with swords, not blood, so these areas are pretty chaotic, full of bandits and rebel lords. because these barons are self-made. Succession is a nightmare. When one dies, random relatives show up to inherit, but they have no clue about the land, and end up dead. Without a leader, the peasants basically become outlaws. Luckily, we have highly detailed records of these mountain lords, from their official title dates to their personal hobbies and local specialties. It prevents serious drama later. They absolutely hate neighbors who sell the exact same products. Like, if I brew fruitwood wine, my neighbor better not touch it. Sure, they can sell grape wine, but copy my brand and it is absolute war. Right at the southern edge of the range stands the giant Mount Manroland, marking the start of Gonzalo's wild frontier. And according to the map, south of it lies a plain, where 3 brave knights already died. It is crawling with goblins, and some pretty terrifying magical beasts. The area around Mount Manroland and this plain is Gonzalo's new frontier territory. Further south of the plain lies a desolate swamp, stretching all the way to the Thorn Coast. This giant swamp is Gonzalo's backup land. Now, buying the rights to develop these wild lands for the next 10 years is pretty common. Why? Well, pioneering knights pay 0 taxes for 3 years. But if they die, the kingdom just sends newcomers, meaning the crown never collects any coins. So buying development rights is just way smarter. This basically means that for the next 10 years, the desolate swamp and Thorn Coast won't see any pioneering knights coming to claim the land. Spending 400 gold coins would only benefit Mount Manroland and the southern plains. Normally, it takes a pioneering knight 10 whole years to uncover enough valuable mineral resources just to break even. But Gonzalo's actual goal is developing the desolate swamp and Thorn Coast, where most of the wilderness is uncharted. Still, it gets heavy rain all year round, with absolutely no winter snow. So, Gonzalo plans to cultivate rice right in that swamp. Back then, the local lords surprisingly had no idea what rice even was. Even the barons near the Mont Mountain area only grew wheat. But according to books from the Garcia family, there are actual records of rice. The ancestors of the Garcia family stumbled on this plant during their travels when they visited the foreign island of Java, just past the Thistle Coast, right there by the sea, are islands where the Javanese people live. Because of this, fleets never dared to approach those waters. So, Gonzalo had to travel from the Fairmont Mountains straight to Mount Manroland. Now, the Javanese worship the sea god, believing their people are favored by the ocean. They strictly forbid any foreign ships from sailing there, and will immediately swarm and attack any vessel they spot. Honestly, they are deeply superstitious, firmly believing that the continent of Atlantis is a land of evil gods, constantly launching raids on the coastlines. So Gonzalo arrived at Mount Manroland, establishing his base there first, developing the mountain and those southern plains, before expanding outward. See, Gonzalo actually reincarnated, and as a former leader, he knew food was the absolute key to survival. Back in feudal days, choosing where to expand was everything. Gonzalo focused his expansion entirely on the south. See, except for its fertile black soil, the north barely yields any crops, and those rich black soil areas, Gonzalo cannot even reach them yet. He still remembered one freezing winter, hosting visiting officials from the far north. They stood speechless, seeing that southern trees actually kept their green leaves all winter long. That right there shows you the massive gap. In a feudal world, northern farming is a total disaster. Even for modern folks, using high-tech methods like greenhouse farming, it is just unrealistic to build up the north into some massive, highly dominant territory. The cramped space and terrain limits make it impossible unless the divine kingdom of the Bright Lord is involved. But whether you build an elite force of knights and high-tier mages, or push for firearms and heavy industry, you need serious talent across every single field. A massive population is absolutely essential to breed that top-tier talent, who can then rise up through Gonzalo's selection system. This builds a massive, highly organized society, which is why Gonzalo chose the warm southern lands of the Atlantis continent. Simply having a snowless winter puts him miles ahead. Meanwhile, back in Brighton, countless slaves and poor serfs freeze to death every single winter. But look, that is a story for another day. Right now, his most urgent focus has to be on the immediate threat. The radical Blood Brothers cult in southeastern Valia is spreading chaos. To reach Freeport, they must either cross a war zone or journey south to escape the Valia region and locate a deepwater port to sail from. Every single move depends on that letter. Count Terence is supposed to send to Baron Raymond. Until then, he cannot act. Gonzalo has been pretty busy lately. With everything settled, Gonzalo has absolutely no interest in attending the castle banquet. He has known these fake nobles forever, and playing nice with them doesn't offer him any real, actual profit. Now, if some new faces showed up, he would gladly drag himself to the party. Outside, the frozen peaks loom, while the trials of those cultists drag on. Father Rory is up walking now, and Gonzalo slowly guides him through the castle. Crossing the outer courtyard, "You are quite talented and a good kid. Do not go wasting those gifts," Rory advises him warmly. Here we go again. He has heard this exact speech all day. Honestly, Gonzalo does not hate the church. Back in his past life as an atheist, he only trusted cold practicality. People only care if you are actually useful. If you are not, you simply do not exist. But this world has actual miracles, real magic and divine power. Gonzalo has literally seen these incredible forces with his own eyes. Still, he just keeps supporting him, silently, opting to play dumb and act completely indifferent. Until some real prophet appears, Gonzalo is keeping his mouth shut. Father Rory seems to read Gonzalo's quiet reluctance. Having spent years dealing with these greedy nobles, he knows exactly what they crave. The church is not nearly as strong anymore. 1,000 years and 2 revolutions later, their grip on the kingdom is slipping fast. Powerful mages now serve the high nobility, actively trying to undermine church authority. Think about that recent cult rebellion down south, deep in Valia, that raged from summer all through winter. Why exactly did Count Terence wait until now to call for action? Gonzalo's chest suddenly tightens. This is not a safe topic for us. At first, Father Rory backed Count Terence. But maybe he is just numb from all the cult torture. Now, he is totally done with these nobles. In Gonzalo's mind, Father Rory and Baron Kent are genuinely good men. Perhaps the Count has some hidden motive. "Holy Father, you asked to see me, but I do not think we came here to talk about gossip." Hearing this, Rory realizes his mistake. So, he clears his throat awkwardly and quickly changes the subject. "You told me your new territory is in the Fairmont Mountains, ruled mostly by nobles, and there are almost 0 churches out there. I am 63, having started my holy service at 16. 8 years later, I was promoted, and I have held this post for 39 years, being a sharp noble." Immediately, Gonzalo sees Rory's game. He wants advancement. "You are joking, Father. I am just a baron's second son. How could I even help?" The priest quickly leads Gonzalo into a room. There is nobody else around. He ensures they are totally alone, mentioning Purple Dawn, the divine arrow. "Asi Garcia, ancient church records prove that you have strong mental power for spells. I found this detail in a rare library book, so I knew you were truly talented." Gonzalo suddenly understands. He thought the priest wanted him to join the church's holy order as a knight, using his powers. But get this, he knew the truth behind that mysterious glowing purple light. "Do not worry. If I expose this secret, it brings me absolutely 0 benefit. Like God is my witness. Now, it's a trade of benefits." Gonzalo carefully considered Father Rory's age. Nobles who fight their entire lives usually only live to 60, but Rory was already 63. Talk about a massive gamble, betting that the priest would survive longer. "Back when I was 24, I officially became a priest. I was proud, always looking down on nobles. I wasted decades only realizing when I grew old that absolutely everything depends on connections. You noble kids get taught this from the start. It took me this long to understand, so I began attending their banquets, bringing along special healing potions, just to make friends with you." Gonzalo nodded, silently agreeing. Nobles really do understand more than commoners. Ordinary families have no inheritance, and have to suffer through lifetimes of heavy hardship just to learn. But a noble, young lord or lady, can read ancestral notes in the library for one night and understand everything. "Become my disciple, and I will give you a knight and priest. I will write to the church to secure a special position for you, and personally teach you healing magic." A knight, Gonzalo was quite interested, especially with his secret status panel, where he could track loyalty. And a priest, even more useful. Healing magic and medical knowledge would be very helpful out in the frontier territory. As for the church controlling the populace, that was impossible in this era. Nobles are masters at resisting the church. Gonzalo grew up watching his own father, Baron Raymond, negotiate tricky church dealings, escaping their control and fighting back. The kingdom's laws already state that nobles must defend the Light Church's legitimacy on their lands. As long as they keep paying their tithes on time, they get along just fine. For instance, Father Lori acts as a mediator for the Baron. If this were 1,000 years ago, any disobedience meant burning at the stake. There was absolutely no need to negotiate back then, especially with nobles. I agree, Father, but I want to choose the person, Gonzalo murmured after a brief moment. Holding the priest's hand, he nods. You can choose, but there can only be one knight, Father Lori replied with a sigh. Today, the Light Church holds almost no military power in these lands, aside from a few major provincial capitals. It is the cost of historic compromises. Their real strength is locked away with the Holy See. I, King Augustus of Valo Province, and Father Lori, hereby accept Gonzalo Garcia as my disciple. Swearing to the Light God, Gonzalo dropped to one knee. He faced the shrine and made a solemn vow. I, Gonzalo Garcia, before the Lord of Light himself, and Father Lori, promise to follow the sacred rules. Under your guidance and authority, I swear to study diligently and show respect. May my Lord witness this. Amen. Gonzalo gently placed both hands on the white crystal, right before the shrine, and closed his eyes. Inside the darkness, a soft white glow formed. Tiny, pearl-sized particles, gathering right in front of Gonzalo, looking like tiny spirits dancing all around him. Soon, they began to sing like a cathedral choir. Their pure, holy voices rose higher. And then, everything starts to shift, revealing the very first pope, leading mankind to wage war against the elves. The Virgin Mary descending to comfort lost souls, and miracles sent by the Lord of Light, radiating across the entire continent of Atlantis, finally forcing the ancient elves out. At this very moment, that pure white crystal glow on Gonzalo's hands flares to its limit, then suddenly vanishes. Very impressive, Gonzalo. Your talent easily surpasses even the proudest elites of the Holy Academy, the voice says, as Gonzalo checks his status, where his spirit rises from 2.0 to 2.5. Within a pretty short time, Father Rory starts training Gonzalo in the ways of divine magic, covering everything from healing to illumination spells. They divided into standard divine spells and light magic, but during the Second Religious Reform, the Church stopped focusing strictly on just divine magic. They began studying light magic and even fire spells. Back then, Pope Francis proposed a wild theory. He claimed that gods actually compete with each other. The Light Church believed that learning more divine spells would directly help the Lord of Light gather way more power. You can guess the reaction. A massive explosion rocked the church. Assassination plots everywhere, and bloody religious wars broke out across the entire continent of Atlantis, affecting every single human nation. Somehow, Pope Francis managed to pull off a victory, but only by cutting deals with powerful nobles and factions inside the church itself. The Light Church officially declared light, fire, and nature magic as completely lawful, but dark magic, deadly death spells, and blood magic were banned as evil heresies. Following this massive religious reform, honestly, the Light Church lost almost all its former influence. Name, Trick, Level 1, 25 years old. Bravery, 1. Knowledge, 6. Strategy, 0. Management, 1. Military is at 0. Spirit, 0.6. No traits. Favorability, 30. Name, Dao. Level 1, 8 years old. Bravery, 0.3. Knowledge, 2. Strategy, 0. Management, 0. 0 military spirit whatsoever. 0.1. No traits. Favorability at 50. Gonzalo stares at the priest in front of him. Their actual mental strength is pretty pathetic. Yet Father Rory keeps praising his incredible talent. Just look at the 8-year-old page, Dao. The priest scouted him out pretty early, and raised the boy within the church. As they study there and grow older, anyone with decent talent gets sent straight to the high court, returning later to serve as fully ordained priests. But get this, their base talent is only 0.1. Once they receive the first light blessing, it jumps by 0.5. To climb higher up the church ranks, a second holy blessing adds 5 more points. From what Gonzalo already knows, combined with this status panel, mental power almost never grows through training, unless they use rare blessings or mage potions, meaning, a regular priest with the first light blessing sits at a 0.6 stat, while others, who manage to get that second blessing, hit 5.6, but without high base stats. Ordinary folks never get these holy blessings anyway, but our transmigrated hero Gonzalo began with a solid 2 points. As the second son, Baron Raymond tested Gonzalo for magical talent, along with his older brother Joey. You know, noble families often joined the priesthood too. Back during childhood, Gonzalo apparently showed absolutely zero mental talent. Father Rory, being quite wise, listed 10 different possible excuses. Gonzalo just keeps nodding, pretending he is definitely one of those rare cases. In reality, he already decided. He is not interested in older priests, or kids who do not even know basic magic, especially anyone with low favorability. While screening every single priest, Gonzalo had only one single question. Are they willing to head out and expand their lands? It is simple, forcing people never leads to success, no matter how gifted they might be. If they do not want to go, it is useless. Gonzalo, he has no time to build their loyalty. Honestly, he has bigger fish to fry. Arthur has red hair, and the villagers, mostly serfs, often look at him pretty differently. See, back then, red hair was usually linked to demons. Even though he joined the church at age 8, the other altar boys constantly mocked him. The Lord of Light says, every single soul should receive divine protection. But Arthur knows slaves are definitely left out. Even past popes have totally tolerated this injustice. So Arthur, with his crimson hair, could only take the cruel mockery in silence. Arthur has incredible talent compared to others. Some priests even suggested he join the church academy, but he feared the bullying and never dared to go. He read tons of books, knowing all about the harsh reality of social classes. The wealthy noble kids at school were probably just as gifted as him, and they read even more. He feared speaking with his quite awkward country accent, terrified of being mocked in the toilets. He would definitely never go to their seminary. Father Rory explained the church in full detail, sharing exactly how much he had personally suffered over the years. Due to his humble, low-class background, this made Arthur even more determined to avoid it. But then, he hears the noble boy speak. He wants to explore and expand his lands. Suddenly, Arthur is highly tempted to escape from his hometown, where he is often shut out. He dreams that one day, settlers will respectfully call him Pastor Arthur. Instead of the red-haired demon, he felt both hope and deep fear. He knows from his constant reading that the mortality rate for explorers and knights is incredibly high. He was terrified of dying if he actually went. Deep down, he was pretty cowardly. Yet, he never let it show. In the end, my only hope was Father Rory. Rumor says he is planning to host a special night for Lord Gonzalo. Father Rory has served as priest for nearly 40 years, so he always thinks things through. Name is Arthur, level 1. Age 15, strength 1.2. Knowledge 6, strategy 1. Management 2, military 0. Spirit 0.7, no traits. Loyalty 50. Gonzalo questioned Arthur if he was ready to explore new lands. Arthur already has the holy blessing of light. His base spirit is 0.2, which is higher than most. Gonzalo selected him, mostly because he is 15 and in great shape. Priests focus strictly on supportive magic, and are absolute garbage in actual combat, making his strength just 1.2. The exact same applies to mages. Only wealthy nobles can actually afford keeping mages, and their battlefield presence is mostly just support. If support classes were actually strong in battle, then lords would be priests instead of warriors, not knights, because the ultimate battlefield force is always knights. Honestly, no other race stands a single chance against a fully mobilized knight army. This is how humanity holds its ground on this massive continent of Atlant. Sadly, knights are extremely rare. Gathering every single noble into one massive army is nearly impossible. Only when human survival is completely threatened would they ever unite. The Valor region has around 50 Baron territories, assuming each house has 3 knights, from the Baron down. That makes about 150 knights. A Viscount can support at least 10 knights, and a Count keeps 60 or so. So the total force in Valor is actually only about 200 to 300 across 12 provinces. Clearly, a single kingdom just cannot actually field 10,000 total knights. Once they confirm Arthur is a priest, he will become a knight. Father Rory has exactly 1 knight to select. Gonzalo already knew his identity before asking him to join the exploration crew, but he still needs to consult Baron Potter. Character Potter, level 1. Age 16, bravery 1.1. Knowledge 0.1. Strategy is 0. Management is 0. Military skill 0. Spirit is 0. Traits absolutely none. Favorability -10. Gonzalo sits across from Potter at the negotiation table. Lately, Potter has been eating decent meals and learning to read. Look at those stats rise. He is actually growing. He is definitely making real progress. I recall the last time I checked on Potter. His favorability was still sitting at 80. Looks like Baron Potter has actually learned something. Gonzalo casually pats Potter on the shoulder. Potter instantly flinches, clearly terrified of this man. Despite his negative favorability, and under pressure from Baron Raymond, Potter can only swallow his bitter anger. Deep down he realizes this is just how high society works. You simply have to get used to it. Besides, you are quite young and handsome. A baron at that age, pretty insane. Plenty of high-born ladies would love to be with you. Gonzalo flashes a highly meaningful smile. When dealing with people from lower classes, you have to speak their language to get close. Since Potter is from a commoner background, and grew up around folks who love to joke, taking a straightforward approach with him works best. Hearing these words, Potter suddenly blushes as he realizes something. He only ever wanted a single wife. Plus, finding a wife is pretty hard. But now, his status changes. He is a baron now. If Gonzalo can flirt, then Potter can easily chase other men's wives. Right, Baron Potter. His favorability rating hits 70 after this. Favorability instantly shoots up. Gonzalo grins. Now that is more like it. No real noble lives without some flirtation. Let's hope Potter's future sons don't have black hair. And maybe Lolita will drink that moonfall potion. Gonzalo does not mind. Besides, Potter's noble title will probably end soon. But here's the catch. Aaliyah never told Potter's family about the inheritance. Specifically, the Ozier family's promotion potion inheritance. Aaliyah already stopped it, only exchanging the original raw liquid for a ready-made potion to profit more. In 10 years, Potter will need to win a major war, or buy status from a high noble. But a land baron won't become a knight in 10 years. Something will go wrong, or he will go to war, and non-knights usually die much faster. Plus, buying his status is highly unlikely anyway. In the end, only Baron Raymond, or Big Brother guy, could support Potter's son with that promotion potion, ultimately making him a vassal of the Garcia family. But Baron Potter, lacking any real noble education, was still happily lost in his own fantasy. He thinks he understands. Next, the contract to sever ties with Knight Hans. It needs Baron Potter's official signature. I assume Father Lori already explained all this to you. Ever since the castle was looted, Knight Hans's original loyalty oath cannot be found anywhere. So only this termination document is needed now. Potter hesitates. To him, Hans is a total hot potato, and he has absolutely no money to pay Knight Hans's ransom. Even his own official appointment has not been issued yet, especially if he dares to oppose Father Lori. Step out those doors, and he would instantly be branded a heretic. Baron Potter knew the massive stakes here. He slowly picked up a pen, and awkwardly scratched his name onto the parchment. Finally cutting ties for good, Gonzalo then traded with Baron Potter, buying cattle and horses, purchasing grain, and even buying back slaves, mostly young adults and entire families. Next, Gonzalo paid his father, Baron Raymond, 10 gold coins as the ransom for Knight Hans. Honestly, this was an absolute steal. Normally, other barons who were also knights paid 500 gold coins for ransom, but since Raymond was his dad, Gonzalo got away with a massive discount. In the outer courtyard, Gonzalo stared down at Knight Hans, kneeling before him. Hans was dressed in rough, plain gray linen, with nothing but a cheap short sword at his waist, just tied with a hemp rope. He looked nothing like the proud, armored knight he once was. Yet Hans insisted on swearing loyalty, because Gonzalo had finally punished Elias the Beast, exactly as he deserved before. He had originally sworn loyalty to the ogre family. Not a king killer, he almost took his own life. But now, he had a new life. That official document cutting ties meant that Knight Hans no longer had any connection to the ogre family. Back in the courtyard, Baron Raymond, Father Lori, and Baron Potter, with other barons and their knights, who still had not paid their ransom, watched closely as Gonzalo raised his father's blade, resting the magical sword on Hans's shoulder, instead of using the ogre family's magic sword. Now watch this, Gonzalo steps up before everyone. Today, I hereby knight Hans, a true knight of the Garcia family. He was commanded to follow the 6 virtues of a knight: loyalty and courage, honor and humility, justice and unwavering faith. Hans drops to one knee, fist pressed tight over his heart. He shouts his oath, I swear, to face every foe with courage, and strike down evil. Without hesitation, I will defend those who cannot protect themselves, and aid the needy. Women and children shall remain unharmed, staying loyal to my allies and my lord. By the holy name of the Lord of Light, I shall always do my duty. Hans, Level 2. Age 38, Bravery 8. Knowledge is 2, Strategy 1. Management 2, Military 5, Spirit 0. Traits, none. Loyalty 100. Watch his stats jump from 30 straight to loyalty 100. Right then, a messenger dashed into the courtyard, slipping a letter to Baron Raymond. The watching nobles whisper, spotting the wax seal of the Feld family crest. It belongs to Count Terence, governor of Valen province. Baron Raymond breaks the seal. Watch this. Baron Raymond Garcia is appointed as the new commander of the Northwest garrison of Valen province. He's securing the entire region, capturing heretics, bandits and rebels to keep the peace. Baron Raymond Garcia is fully exempt from frontline conscription, and so is Baron Song Shui. If large-scale heretic movements happen, Baron Raymond is ordered to cooperate with Nathaniel Boone, who leads the Western garrison, and Ethan Crawford, who is the Northern garrison commander, to defeat the enemy, but every other lord must deploy no fewer than 300 troops to support the front. Governor of Valong province. Count Terence Field finished reading the letter aloud. Everyone froze as Baron Inzo roared out in anger, targeting the marriage of Nathaniel Boone's house and Count Terence's own son. See, the Boones are actually tied to Count Terence through his mother's side. Heretics had been spreading across the southeast since summer, yet Count Terence only finally called for soldiers at the end of winter. Now that spring is already here, this is clearly a plot to drain the southeastern lords and the church itself. Baron Inzo, watch your mouth, Baron Raymond warned seriously, knowing Father Rory was watching close by. Since being nailed to a cross by heretics, Father Rory had lost all hope. He just walked back to the main hall alone, no longer caring about the schemes of these nobles. Gonzalo simply sneered at Count Terence's games. Anyone could see that Terence was deliberately stalling to weaken those southeastern lords and break church control. Now, why does this region actually matter? Because it is the absolute richest city in Vala. It is way wealthier than Pisa, the capital city of Terence's Vala territory. This free port is the primary hub for north and south trade along the east coast, from the northern port of Eternal Night, down to the free port, then to the southern Sunrise port. These three make up the kingdom's premier trading harbors. Now, both Eternal Night and Sunrise ports are locked down by top-tier noble houses, but the free port has been jointly run by Viscount Garrett Randall and over a dozen southeastern barons for hundreds of years. Don't count these minor lords out. Many have deep ties in the capital. Over generations, powerful nobles have tried to seize control of the free port, but they were always shut down. It even led to a royal trial once, featuring 12 elite knights in a legendary duel. Back then, 6 champion knights from each side fought a brutal, life-or-death battle in the capital, watched closely by the king and court. The capital's citizens watched everything with eager eyes. Finally, the Southeastern Noble Alliance of Vala One had to act. But check this out, another major noble wants this land. He's using pretty sneaky tactics. So Raymond and his barons gathered to debate. They ultimately agreed to pay up a massive ransom. First, offering valuable goods or nearby territories as collateral. These lords then headed home to mobilize their armies and heirs. Everyone assumed that deploying these soldiers was just a mere formality, so they put their eldest sons in charge of the troops. After all, if the firstborn died, the second son could step up. They would still survive. Plus, this draft was voluntary, meaning the barons had to cover every single expense personally. And here's the absolute worst part of this system. Stopping minor peasant uprisings earned them 0 military glory, so the fighters got almost nothing out of it. Real honor for these human kingdoms came from conquering entirely new lands or crushing foreign invaders. Mere clashes between neighbor states or small holy wars didn't count nearly as much. Gonzalo talked things over with his father, Baron Raymond. In the end, he decided to follow the army, halting right at Reedwater City, located on the far southeastern edge of Vala. From there, he would watch the conflict. If things wrapped up quickly, he'd ride east toward the free port. But if it dragged on, he'd escape Vala entirely and sail away to safer harbors elsewhere. Heading to that free port made perfect sense. First of all, the ships there. Only the fastest, top-tier vessels of the kingdom docked there, making them incredibly fast and reliable. Second, there's a huge price advantage. Before heading out, Gonzalo must stock up on essentials. And this port's massive markets make that quite easy. Stocking up on supplies is way cheaper. Third, it is networking. Assuming peace holds out, people from Valong and nearby gather here, making noble meetings pretty easy. Or find fellow explorers from your homeland. They can build real bonds and watch each other's backs out there. Maybe even set up future trade between their lands, earning military glory on the front line. What a total joke. Gonzalo's family fortune cannot risk that gamble. Besides, with his exemption papers ready, nobody can force Gonzalo to join up. Those nobles in the southeastern areas, and Count Trenz has his own disasters. Gonzalo wants absolutely nothing to do with them. Soon, the barons start gathering their armies. The training of these troops was quite varied. Mostly slaves and old, frail farmers. Without real knights leading the charge, the barons actually sent their younger sons, kids who had not achieved anything, with loyal family knights in command. Peasants mostly marched with farming tools, with grass spears, only 20 real protectors. They guarded the family's young heir, and they ended up being the actual core force. Yet even Baron Enzo refused to buy spears. He tried copying Gonzalo's elite scouts, carving cedar sticks into makeshift spears, but he completely missed the secret trick: no charcoal roasting. Meanwhile, Baron Kent, the young heir, had to lead them personally. His father was dead, his sister married off, and their household was flat broke. Only he could carry the family name. Luckily, he already had some heirs, so as long as his bloodline survived, their house would not crumble. Baron Raymond had already returned to Brighton territory to quickly prep his next wave of troops. The garrison's chief job was maintaining order. Regional stability was unlike regular armies. Their troop layouts needed adjustments. His older brother Guy too was already married with kids. He was Brighton territory's second heir, responsible for protecting their family legacy. Meanwhile, Father Rory was busy writing letters, one to the Bishop of Valognes and one to the church. After finishing, he would resume judging heretics. Fortunately, Gonzalo was in no rush. He wanted to trade slaves and supplies with Porter. First, once everything got organized, he could leave. Soon, Gonzalo arrived at camp, alongside Pastor Arthur and Knight Hans. They first sorted the 200 peasants and slaves they brought into the exploration team. From those 200 newcomers, the healthiest young men were chosen and joined the team of 15 knight attendants, including Leo, Jorik, and others, forming a combat force of 300 soldiers. 10 of the team leaders, who previously ran things here, were promoted to official captains, forming a reserve force of 200 people. Most of them were women and skilled workers, like Jorik's second brother John and Leo's wife Amy. This reserve force, also trained in formation and discipline, but in battle, they would stand much further back. Knight Hans was appointed to lead this combat unit, as a veteran who fought on real battlefields, and managed a manor for the Baron. He knew far more about warfare than Gonzalo, and just like that, they hit 500. Pastor Arthur, the second most educated person here, also stepped up to play an important role. So, when a serf cried out in terrible stomach pain, the pastor's skills shined. After examining the serf, he quickly concluded the pain came from raw meat and parasites. He brewed up some medicine for the serf to drink. You see, the serf feared this red-haired pastor, believing he was a devil sent for their soul. But finally, the captain explained it was Gonzalo's order, and the serf swallowed the medicine. Compared to demons, Lord Gonzalo was generous and gave meat to everyone. This made Gonzalo realize a major problem. He told the settlers not to drink unboiled water, and they actually followed that rule. But when he gave them meat, they did not think to cook it, and literally ate it raw. Absolutely wild. So Gonzalo wrote down 6 rules for daily life. Rule 1, water must come from living sources, like a river or stream. Rule 2, no going to the bathroom anywhere. Every camp must have a designated toilet. Rule 3, if feeling sick, go immediately to Pastor Arthur. Rule 4, wash hands, face, hair, and private areas regularly. Gonzalo actually did not recommend full baths to avoid colds. Rule 5, do not eat or drink raw food, including water, meat, or vegetables. Rule 6, sleep near campfires at night to keep warm and avoid getting sick. Gonzalo, Hans, Little Martin, and Arthur, the only 4 literate people there, began teaching the captains how to write. To help everyone remember these rules, Gonzalo also designed a simple game. The settlers on the ground used branches to learn 10 characters every single day. Locke was semi-literate, so he supervised them, Whoever finished the task the fastest would receive a whole pound of meat. They played this every morning and afternoon. Look at this. Inside a tent early morning. Two servants are already packing their things. They are the sons of the Garcia family. Servants named Sayas and Baring, who had also tagged along. Their loyalty is pretty high, and they handle plenty of chores. Things like cooking and laundry, setting up camps and making beds, even learning literacy, organizing notes and delivering messages. In his past life as leader, he kept 3 personal assistants, so he knows their exact value. Now, Gonzalo is training these guys to be his modern-day secretaries. Part clerk, part housekeeper, doing everything. Check this out. Gonzalo sits with this paper, staring at the dense handwriting right there. It lists all the new settlers, written up by little Martin. First up, John Male, age 20, skilled in carpentry, great at running. Then, Shaq, male, 34 years old, a blacksmith, strong, but a heavy drinker. Next, Alan, female, age 17, farms and picks mushrooms. With the others, many women excel at making ropes and sewing, plus 2 carpenters, 1 stone mason, plus a tanner, all bought from Baron Porter. We also have a blacksmith. John actually recruited him from town. He got kicked out of his old shop, mainly for drinking too much, but John befriended him and brought him along. Naturally, he gets paid a decent wage now. Then there is a barber named Jobus, previously captured as a cult member, but Father Lori cleared him, believing Jobus was forced into joining the cult. Once he realized Jobus could cut hair, he offered the man to Gonzalo. Gonzalo saw his favorability was at 20, so he recruited him after a long talk, while fitting in with everyone, boosting his loyalty up to 60. And get this, back then, barbers did more than cut hair. They actually handled serious surgeries. Any deep wounds Pastor Arthur cannot treat, like arrow injuries, are left entirely to Joppas. Their local barber, Baron Raymond, only gave Gonzalo basic apprentices, but Gonzalo's own recruits were genuinely skilled artisans. Baron Raymond never sent real experts to the frontier. Now Gonzalo steps outside his tent, noticing the campfires out there had already gone out. Tents were already loaded onto ox carts. Every single person was carrying their belongings, hand in hand, looking up at Gonzalo with hope for their future. Finally, little Martin walks up and loudly reports. Report for young Master Gonzalo. Our exploration team has 516 people, 22 horses, 1 wagon, and 3 ox carts. Gonzalo did not buy many oxen, simply because they travel too slowly. If rebel cultists or local bandits ambush them, they could at least run away and abandon the heavy carts if needed. Besides, those oxen are just for road food. Once they arrive at Sunrise Harbor, they plan to buy more draft animals, since cattle are much cheaper down south, and it would be perfect to buy water. Buffaloes that can plow those fields. That wagon was for when Gonzalo got tired of riding. Even now, he has zero plans to act like some common blacksmith. Deep down, Gonzalo is still a proud noble at heart. He mounts his horse and speaks out loudly. No matter where you all come from, whatever your status, or what cruel hardships you have faced, from today on you are no longer knights or servants, serfs, slaves, or common craftsmen and workers. You are my pioneers, Gonzalo's own settlers. I know this journey is pretty dangerous, rebels, bandits, monsters, and all those other tribes. But I, Gonzalo Garcia, swear before the Lord of Light, to guard your lives and interests, as the appointed leader of this frontier exploration team. And with that, they set sail. Everyone was completely stunned. They simply couldn't believe their ears. But get this, most thought Gonzalo was just spouting nonsense. Just typical empty noble talk. Lords did that constantly. Today they are in a great mood and talk nonsense. Tomorrow they forget every word, and by the next day, they whip you. Yet, a few actually took his words to heart, and honestly, Gonzalo kept every single promise so far. They ate actual whole grain bread, plus they got 10 pounds of meat and rich soup. No other lord had ever done anything like this. They swore that all these blessings came from their young lord, the black-haired young man standing right before them.